And it's just hilarious to me that they're all whinging about how the algorithm's gone bad for them. And I'm looking at it going, I love this level playing field. Like it's actually been leveled out. Like I've been fighting a headwind that I couldn't see for years, at least since COVID. And now all of a sudden, all my numbers are just gone nuts. Have you found the same thing?
100%. I'm getting, I think it's like 1.5 million impressions on Instagram, and I'm growing by like 1,000 a week. And I'm like,
amazing.
I'm not doing anything different.
I don't mean to gazump you there. You're talking 1.5 million a month.
Oh, here we go.
You can't really see. Hang on. If I block my face, it might focus. See the end of that graph there?
Nah.
I'm on track for 5 million today.
That's insane. They've definitely shifted something. I think we spoke last week about Joel.
Yeah.
And how Joel was saying like all of his accounts are now growing again. So whatever that boot was, it's now, you know, moving. But
I'm just loving the win.
It's backwards, obviously, but
amazing.
Yeah. So
I'm just loving the whinging that's coming out of, you know, Friendly Geordies and a bunch of these others that are like, oh, you know, this might be my last episode. Friendly Geordies coming out. I can't make money like this. I'm like, dude, you had the scales tilted in your favor ever since you started. People like me have been fighting my way up, and now we've got the proof. We've said it for a long time, but we've got the proof. YouTube comes out and Meta come out and say, hey, we're removing all of the tilting. And then all of a sudden, boom, here we go.
Welcome to meritocracy, guys. You're going to actually have to try. You're going to actually have to put some effort into your content. I can't wait to see what happens to all the SJWs when they realize that it's no longer in vogue, and they're going to have to spin to something that, you know, they've got nothing else really, do they?
I tell you what, so we've talked for a long time about the fact that we're on the cusp of a massive cultural shift. Like this has been something you and I have been talking about for literally a couple of years now, and particularly this year, like we're on it now. And for those that have missed potentially those conversations, I point to two key things. The revolution always eats its own children. Right. And that's a truism that always happens. And the culture always breeds its own counterculture, which again is always true. But it's when you see those two things reaching a crescendo at the same time that you know you're on the cusp of a massive shift. We're watching the feminist revolution eat its own children. We're watching the likes of Jermaine Greer, the likes of J.K. Rowling, the likes of Martina Navratilova. These people were the darlings of the feminist movement. Now they're persona non grata. They're eating their own children. And we're watching a counterculture being born. And I think the huge significance of what happened with Charlie and the assassination of Charlie Kirk last week is it has radically accelerated the rate at which that younger generation is going to pick its side. And it has massively increased the proportion of that generation that is going to go, nah, I'm going this way. I'm going back to family values, getting a real job, learning a trade, learning a craft, getting married, having kids, going to church, all that stuff. There was already a cohort that was heading that way. And this has just put it onto absolute freaking steroids.
Yeah. I do, before we get stuck into things, I do have a matter of business. And I was going to try and be funny, but this doesn't require humor. This requires seriousness, because I know that we, you know, lean into our characters a little bit, spicy Carlz and whatnot, but a line has been crossed. And so I say this to our one and only Amanda Trollier. I'm speaking to you. I just want to remind you, as our resident lefty, that we happily engage with you. For however long we've been doing this podcast and you've been there, you've always been invited into the conversation. You've always had a seat at the table. We've been civil to you. Whilst we may have disagreed with you, we've never been unkind. We've never been rude.
I've been a little bit rude from time to time, but just only rude with words. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, but then there comes a point when you realize through behaviors that we're actually very different. And Amanda, whatever your name is, coward that can't use your real face, you are nothing but an animal. Because we saw your comment after Charlie Kirk where you thought it was funny to post a man who was murdered and a comment so disgusting, so beneath civility, and you think it's funny. Well, you know what, Amanda? You don't deserve a seat at the table. You want to behave like an animal? You can go out and squander around in the mud like the rest of them. Because we don't need you here, Amanda. We allow you to be here. And if you can't be civil, if you can't show morality, You have no place here. This is a chat where we discuss things, where we're open to discussion. But if you're going to sit there and champion someone's murder and post a photo of their murder and say, wow, I guess they lean left now, you are an animal. You are a barbarian and you have no place in civil discussion. So that being said, you're blocked. And I dare say you'll make a whole lot of different accounts and I'll continue to block you. People like you are the scourge of the earth. You are a cockroach and you deserve to rot in hell. You have no place in civil discourse. So get fucked. Never come back. I hope you rot in hell. Goodbye.
The only adjustment I'll make is I hope you don't rot in hell. But yeah,
well,
bye.
I do hope she rots in hell. He, her, whatever.
Well, you and me are a little different on that point, but Amanda Trollier was banned and their comments were removed is the notification I've just had. So for those that want to know, I'm not going to go into graphic detail, but she posted onto one of my videos on my YouTube channel a picture of Charlie Kirk as he was dying and what she thought was a funny quip. It's one that's gone around. She is not original enough to have come up with it herself. She grabbed it from someone else. I blocked her off my channels. It takes a hell of a lot for me to block someone. But that was a line. It was crossed. And Carlz and I talked about it. And Carlz, I'm 100% with you.
Yeah. So, and this is the thing. Like, if there's any of you hiding in the chat that think you're going to make a quip about murder tonight, get the fuck out. I am not in a mood to be played with. I am done. And we're going to get into this conversation.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot to be talked about. But, you know, for the most part, I would say I'm pretty tolerable. And even though, like, Clementine Ford, disagree with her wholeheartedly, but whatever, she has her corner of the internet. She's come after me countless times. And I'm like, she's going to be whatever she's going to be. But when you start cheering for actual murder, you are no longer human. You have boycotted your humanity. And I'm grateful in a weird way of how many people have exposed themselves. And I think the best thing that will come out of this, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in depth, is I think a lot of people on the left, the more moderate on the left, have had a very rude awakening and realized that, holy shit, I'm on the wrong side. You know,
the people they're hanging out with are not who they thought they were.
And, you know, not to center you or I in the discussion, and I want to be really conscious when I do this because I'm certainly not trying to compare us in any capacity. It's more so there's always the threat of someone doing something stupid, right? And you guys are probably familiar with my story in COVID and what happened to me. I've experienced genuine fear. But now that death is on the table, murder is on the table, it kind of makes you go, shit, okay, we're not the same.
Yeah.
You know, like words are words. Sorry, go.
Yeah. Can I make a comment? We were chatting about this just before we came on air, and I think it's worth talking about this on air. They just killed the guy that handed them the microphone. Mm-hmm. This is the thing of everybody. Not that I'm saying that anyone's murder would be justified, but think about all of the high-profile American influencer types, right? How many of them actually hand their opponents a microphone and said, hey, you have your moment in the sun. Let's have a discussion. Very, very few. There are a few, but very few. And no one does it on the scale that Charlie Kirk did. The person that they took out was arguably the most civil, the one who was actually platforming them. And for as long as they didn't go off and do something and say something really stupid, he would have a legitimate conversation with them. There are others that have shows where they just preach and they might do stadium events or conferences, whatever, where they get to talk to the crowd. Charlie put the microphone into their hands and he's the guy that they take out. I think that's what makes this so shocking. I mean, it's shocking in its own right. But for me, when you actually just take a step back and you kind of, you absorb the fact, okay, someone's been assassinated, that's a given now in your psyche. Someone's been assassinated. Look who of all of the people they could have chosen. And I think it really says something. And it is disgusting. It is shocking. And we welcome disagreement. How many months have we put up with Trollier? I've put up with her for even longer on my page. We block people very rarely. But she absolutely earned that one.
I block people on my Instagram when there's a level of viciousness. You know, like
Yeah.
I have people disagree with me all the time, and I don't mind that. The disagreement's very natural. It's when it's laced with a level of vitriol that you sort of go, hang on a minute. That's
Yeah.
this is beyond just simple disagreements. And
Yeah.
so I think I might just start very quickly with Abby Chatfield. So I'm going to
Okay.
share something.
Before we do that, because we're going to end up on that topic all night, I'm just mindful there's a few super chats have come in with some really good comments and questions. CJ Westman says, when the US Department of Labor releases their quarterly report, we're going to see the Charlie Kirk dip in the graph. Judging by the look of some of the leftists getting fired, the HR departments were probably waiting for course to terminate anyway. There's a lot of people losing their jobs. What's interesting, CJ, is a lot of people are saying that the jobs market's gone backwards in the US because the job numbers look bad. What has actually happened, and I should do a video on this actually now that I think about it, is that there's been an awful lot of deception and gaming of the numbers. We know it happens here in Australia. It certainly happens in the US as well. And what Trump has done is come in and said, no, you're going to actually just calculate these numbers honestly. We're stripping away all of the different ways that they could manipulate it. And so, yes, there's a correction happening where the numbers are actually coming back to their true numbers of what they ought to be. Then after that, we're going to see what the actual performance of the job market under Trump is going to be. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if there is a dip at this moment in time. Have the Marxist commies curling and hiding. We need to peacefully take back the culture and shame them out of existence. Well, this and well done to everyone involved. Thanks, Topher and Carlz. You're dead right. And Carlz, you talk about shame and the importance of shame and the societal function of shame a lot. And I think you've been very much vindicated through this whole process.
It's interesting, isn't it? There's a level here of just plasticity on our behalf. We have been tolerable and, you know, tried to take the high road, tried to accept people and just go, hey, don't agree with it. These people are always going to do that. But when murder is on the table, that changes everything. This Charlie Kirk thing is I don't want to say the obvious, but this is a real course correction.
Well, there's sort of the BC era, the before Charlie, and the AD era, the after death era. I think in terms of the modern generation, younger people especially, it's not on the scale of a 9/11. I'm not trying to pretend that it is, but in the same way that was an event where if you were alive at the time, you remember where you were when you heard about it.
This is a JFK. This is a JFK equivalent.
Yeah, JFK. That's fair. Yeah.
Interestingly, and I know this is quite a gruesome sentiment, but I actually think this is very powerful. During the day or the post assassination of JFK, Jackie Kennedy, as the new president was being sworn in, was still in the same outfit, covered in brain matter and skull fragments. And they kept trying to get her to at least change. And she said, no, I'm going to show them what they did to my husband. And she stayed in that outfit the rest of the day. And it's gruesome, but it's a stark reminder. And on the topic of murder of Charlie Kirk, I didn't know he was dead until I saw the blood pouring out of his neck. Now, I don't know about you, Topher. I'm not adjusted to seeing murder. I'm not someone that wants to see that on my social media. I can hear that someone has been murdered. I can be told there's an assassination. Seeing the video footage, seeing the moment the life leaves his body is not normal. And we have now got people who are cheering and salivating over it. So this is a JFK equivalent because we saw JFK get murdered. We saw it happen live on TV. We saw the brain matter. We saw the fragments of his skull in the back of the car. It was all over Jackie Kennedy. And now we've seen Charlie Kirk's blood pouring out of his neck in front of the world. So
in front of his kids, by the way, his wife and kids were at that event, and one of his daughters was quite close to him when he died. And it is shocking to think that anyone can do that to another human being. We know they can. We know that there's murder and there's war and all those things all the time. But yeah, this is rightly incredibly shocking. How about
Just on the war thing, because people keep conflating this, like everyone's, oh, well, what about Gaza? What about Palestine?
Yeah.
What about children's shootings? Yes, all death is bad. Yes, I agree. I don't like seeing people getting their legs blown off. I don't like seeing people get shot in schools. But what
Yeah.
I don't like seeing is someone who's literally just sitting there talking to a crowd, get
Yeah.
shot from a guy from 200 meters away. There is
Yeah.
a distinction here. That person wanted an audience. And all of the war porn that people showcase from whether it's Gaza or Syria or Ukraine, that's war porn. You're not watching that
Yeah.
in real time. The Charlie Kirk thing was someone speaking until he wasn't.
Yeah.
So it's you can't compare, and no one wants anyone to. Well, I shouldn't say no one. That's a blanket statement. I think most civil, most moral people don't advocate for death. But having said that, I now do actually believe that should they be capable of it, should there be an option to do it, I think a lot of these people on the progressive left would resort to violence to silence people like you and I. I really do believe that now.
Unfortunately, this is one of those moments where, you don't necessarily have to believe in God, but I think everyone can agree that there is such a thing as evil. When you're faced with something like this, there is such a thing as evil, and we saw it acting out. And unfortunately, we've seen it acting out in some Australian commentators as well. Let's get to that. Otherwise, we'll be stuck here all night.
So this is one Abby Chatfield, and this is a tweet I put up. Oh, sorry, there's something.
Show.
I don't want to promote that. How do I get that to piss off? Go away. Why is that little thing? I don't know how to get that promote thing off. I don't want to promote it. There we go.
There we go.
Okay. So this is a tweet I put up, and it's just how I felt. Obviously you can read it. I said, only a morally bankrupt narcissist could center herself in the cold-blooded murder of someone else. Abby, you are an unimaginable cunt. You have forfeited your humanity. And this tweet or post has now gone mega viral. We're over 100,000 views, and it just keeps going. The reason I share this is the gloves are off. The gloves are off now. Like for the most part, people are like, oh, Abby's annoying, right? No, she's a cunt. I'm sorry. And I know there's a lot of people that get really offended in Topher's comments when I swear. If you have more of a problem with me swearing than you do people like Abby calling for assassination and cheering murder, you need to grow the fuck up. I am going to swear a lot. We're talking about assassination. We're talking about genuine evil. And if you're afraid of some bad language, grow up. That's what I'm going to say on that. So
with apologies, I'm going to take her off screen because I don't want to have to look at her.
No. So interestingly, the comments, right? That's where I gauge the temperature. Their comments are scathing of Abby, and so they should be
on her page.
On my post. They are
on yours. Yeah.
They are nasty. They are quite aggressive. And Abby has put out a statement, right? So she put up a story on her Instagram. Now I don't follow her, so everything I hear about Abby is filtered through social media. I don't even want to look at her page. I actually blocked her so she doesn't pop up. And so she put up something on her stories saying, basically like, actually don't think this is a good thing. They're going to martyr him now. And, that's going to make it worse for us. Right. So that was her hot take.
Yeah.
And just on that quick caveat, I was disgusted how quick people were to try and get their hot takes out. His body wasn't even cold yet, and people could not rush to social media quick enough to give their little clips, their little takes, their little comments, right? It was sickening, fucking sickening. And I grew up in the generation that was told, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Yet people could not wait to offload, right?
Yeah, that was before the internet was invented, Carly.
Yeah, apparently. And now Abby has put out a statement. And I have not read her statement. I have only seen what the Daily Mail reported. So I'll show you what the Daily Mail have posted so we can all see it. And she's basically come out and saying now she lives in fear because right-wing people are trying to kill her. So Abby, of all the people on this planet, now believes that because of Charlie Kirk's assassination, she's the next in line. That's how sick these people are.
What's amazing to me in the case of Clementine Ford and Abby Chatfield is how quickly they can switch from being the provocateur. Let's not forget Abby's weird video that she did with all the twitching and twerking and all that, where she was essentially calling for the assassination of Donald Trump, right? That wasn't very long ago. That was a matter of weeks or maybe a couple of months ago at the absolute most.
Yeah.
So she has contributed to this atmosphere in which assassination has been seen as a viable political tool. She has contributed to that ecosystem, to that atmosphere. And then all of a sudden, when she gets called out, and, you know, honestly, if you want a clear illustration of the fact that the right are not the problem when it comes to violence, have a look at the response to George Floyd. The riots, the looting, the burning down of buildings, the burning down of courthouses and police stations, and taking over city blocks. The what was it? The autonomous zone, the Capitol Hill autonomous zone that they took over. That was the response to someone who had a history of criminal behavior dying during an arrest. Now, there's a lot going on in that arrest. I think the arrest was a little bit over the top, but also he was coked up on all kinds of things. And you know, I'm not going to go into the details there, but that was an ambiguous death whilst being taken into custody, and they rioted and burnt down, you know, looted and burnt down city blocks, versus someone who is having a dialogue and handing a microphone to his adversaries being shot in the neck in cold blood. And where's the rioting? As you know, I guarantee you, if a single building had been burnt down over this, we would have heard all about it. It would have been all over the news. Nothing. What's happening instead is people are gathering, holding candles in the air, singing hymns and saying prayers and vowing to continue his work, which was dialogue. Like if you want a clearer illustration, I'm not a fan of the left-right dichotomy, but honestly, the liberals versus conservatives, as they call them in the United States, liberals being the progressives or the more Labor Green side of things, and the conservatives being the more Republican side of things. If you wanted an object lesson that would show you the difference, like we are not the same, this is it. Not a single bit of rioting, looting, burning, nothing. And if Abby Chatfield honestly believes that she's in some sort of mortal danger because she's been an insufferable cunt, I couldn't agree more with your description of her, then she is delusional. She is projecting her own fantasies of violence, reminding you again, she called for the assassination of Donald Trump a matter of a few months ago. She's projecting her fantasies of violence onto the people that she imagines are her enemies.
Well, so this is the distinction between the two. We're going to get to Clementine Ford in a second anyway. But the distinction between Abby and Clem, and I don't say this lightly, Clementine Ford is intelligent. And this is something I'm going to say to every single person that's watching right now. Stop underestimating your opponents. Whenever I see people try and shut down Clem Ford, it's always because, you know, the gap in her teeth, you know, or she's ugly or whatever, right? Stop with that shit. I'm not saying stop because you're being mean. I'm saying that's not helpful. Clementine Ford's not an idiot. She's actually very intelligent and she knows how to toe the line and dance around the law. So stop underestimating our opponents. But Abby is actually an idiot. Abby is not intelligent. And I say this because she's an opportunist. And I'm not trying to be nasty. I'm not trying to be nasty. Everything that Abby says, someone else has said previously. Abby is a product of TikTok, and all of her hot takes are takes that she's borrowed from someone else, from smaller creators.
It's derivative.
And she doesn't actually believe any of this stuff. So Abby takes her time to post because she's going around gathering the sentiment of other people, and then she parrots the words. And you know this because she gets so hyperbolic when she starts to fidget and scream, "You're a Nazi, you're a bigot," and she screams it. Now, Clementine Ford, I do actually believe Clementine Ford is a sociopath. Now, I can't diagnose people, but Clementine Ford does what she does with a level of sincerity and calm that is quite scary. Abby, not so much. Abby is emotional. So the reason we bring these two women up, because people are always like, stop platforming these women, stop giving them attention. It's no different to Hassan Piker or what's that guy's name? Mehdi Hassan. These people exist, and the more you keep saying just ignore them, they are over like a cancer metastasizing on the left, gaining influence. The reason we talk about them is we want to shame them. We want people to look at them and go, no, this is not the way. Now, I've got the video of Abby and Clem if you guys want to watch it or you want to see it. But
not really, no.
Let's stick on Abby for a second. She is a genuine narcissist. She is someone that has been brought up in the public eye. She's gotten the fame. She's addicted to it. And where does she go from here? Like realistically, and this is me not trying to be an asshole, Where does someone go that's reached what is kind of the pinnacle of Australian TV right now? She was on The Bachelor, then she was the host of a TV show, and now what? She's not an actress. She's not a musician. She's not an artist as such. Her option is influencer. Abby needs influence. She needs to stay in the cultural zeitgeist. She needs to be in the headlines. Otherwise, where's her value? What is she? What is her talent?
Yeah. And this is what we've talked about before, and I'll touch on it briefly again. There's a reason why in nature so many animals have to struggle in order to be born. A bird getting out of an egg, a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly getting out of that cocoon. The struggle is what builds the strength. In the case of caterpillars, it's about getting blood flow and so forth. And unfortunately, that is a universal principle. That's a natural law. The struggle builds the strength. And there are so many people that when they get the easy ride, when someone tries to do them a favor, so to speak, and they don't have to have that struggle, they never build the resilience, the strength, and they therefore don't have the skills to survive in the place that they've been elevated up to. There's an expression called a post turtle. If you're walking along and you see a fence post and there's a turtle balanced on top, you don't know how it got there, but you know sure as hell it didn't get there by itself, right? And it has no idea what to do now that it's there. So someone like an Abby Chatfield is a post turtle. She got elevated up into that position. She did not have to struggle for it, and therefore she does not have the skills and the strength to be able to actually handle the level of criticism that comes back at you. And you don't even have to say something outrageous. If you're just in the public eye, you can just say anything and you're going to cop a lot of flack back at you, let alone if you're an Abby Chatfield and you say the kinds of things that she does. And she just doesn't have the strength or the skill set to actually handle it. Now, I want to bring up this comment here from CJ Westman. The Ottomans would take their enemies' children, educate and brainwash them, and create janissaries. The left does the same and created its own elite fighters, the janissaries. Very clever. There's actually quite a lot of depth to this comment, and this is something that I talk about in my second book, Good Christians Break Bad Laws. What we have today, actually, on the left, on that extreme end of the progressive crazies, is essentially the woke left has become a death cult. And that sounds like an inflammatory term, but let me explain. Let me justify this. In the Bible, it talks about those that hate me love death, and that's a reference. That's wisdom that's speaking. But wisdom, wisdom is the beginning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So we can contract that to say that those who reject the fear of the Lord, those that don't acknowledge God, love death. And what we see in the rejection in this post-Enlightenment era where we've rejected God out of society, the 10 Commandments are gone, the Bible's not being read, no one's allowed to pray in public, all that stuff's happened. When we've now entered a world where actually we're viewing death as a solution. So everything from abortion, oh, you don't want that child, or you're not in a financial position, or you want to finish your degree, that's okay. We'll just, a little bit of death, we can fix that problem, just a little bit of death. Or are you old and suffering and unhappy? Oh, a little bit of death is fine. Are you not even old? You're just sad. Well, we can fix that with a little bit of death. And the transgender cult, that's what I believe it is actually a death cult, not in the sense that it kills the individual, but no one post-surgery is having babies, right? These people are not having kids. And there is a reality of demographics. The future is written by those who show up. And if you don't have kids, then your kids can't show up. And so there is a reality that they are out there recruiting all the time. They have to. They don't have a future unless they recruit other people's kids. And sadly, we saw that in the shooter in the case of Charlie Kirk, where this is a guy that comes from a relatively conservative family, long line of Republican voters, was taught how to hunt by his dad out in the Alaskan wilderness, if I'm remembering the stories correctly, but was taught how to hunt. He landed that bullet because his dad gave him the skills to do that. He took that shot with a bolt action hunting rifle.
Yeah.
And what had happened was the left had got to him. He was in a relationship with a trans-identifying boyfriend, and it was rejecting everything that his family had previously stood for, and had gone on a vitriolic rant about Charlie Kirk in the days before the assassination. And he was one of these people who got recruited. And what happens is if someone gets raised left, there's no way in hell they're going to make that shot. But if they can recruit someone who was raised conservative, well, then they get the skill set. They get someone who's actually hardworking, someone who's physically fit, someone who knows how to handle a rifle. This recruitment issue, and I know, CJ, I've made a serious comment out of a funny comment, but this is actually a serious issue. This recruitment issue is exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Just on that, when you were talking about the trans person, what I found most disgusting is obviously, firstly, people's reactions, but also how quickly people were trying to create conspiracy theories and disparaging remarks around Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Oh, the FBI, they need to stand down. Everyone just needs to take a fucking breath. Like, honestly, take a fucking breath. It is going to take a little bit of investigation, a little bit of time. They believe they have the right person, whatever, right? But before that, people like, how have they not found him? This is disgusting, Kash Patel. Guys need to remember, this was their friend. This wasn't just a guy. This was their friend. Charlie Kirk helped get Trump elected. Charlie Kirk knows all these people. They know him. They just saw their friend get fucking murdered. Can we just remember, whether it's Trump, Dan Bongino, me, you, we're all fucking human. We're going to have a reaction, and it doesn't necessarily look the way you expect it to. Some people lash out. Some people cry. Some people go silent.
Yeah. And more than that, there are people that want to get rid of Kash Patel for their own reasons. And when something like this comes up, they're not going to have the humanity to go, hey, this is a manhunt over a cold-blooded murder. Maybe we'll cut the guy a break and let him do his job. No. This is our opportunity. We can get rid of Kash Patel. And so they want to stoke the resentment, and they'll play both sides of the field. They'll play the conservatives who are outraged and want their man now. They'll play those people and try and stoke the fires of outrage in order to try and get their man, Kash Patel, in this particular example. So we have to understand there's a book that I recommend everyone read called Rules for Radicals, written by a guy. I'll think of his name in a second.
Well done.
Help me out in the comments. Who wrote Rules for Radicals? I can normally get his name off the top of my head, but I can't right now. And he wrote Rules for Radicals, and he literally was laying out kind of a tactical and infantry minor tactics handbook for how to control and how to sort of Saul Alinsky. That was him, Saul Alinsky. How to kind of manipulate people to get a radical outcome. So they called themselves radicals. They were revolutionaries. They were Marxists. They wanted a communist revolution in America. And the rules that he wrote are not partisan. They're not left-wing rules. They're just rules. They work. If you want to be in organizing, if you want to be in politics, you need to understand his rules. And one of the core ones you need to understand, because it helps you to understand what's happening in the world around you, is their reaction is our action. Now, what that means in practice is you don't do the thing that will get you closer to your goal. No. What you do is the thing that will get them to react in a way that will take you closer to your goal. So essentially what you're doing is you're conning them, you're outraging the other side into wanting to come in the direction that you want them to go in the first place. And this is a classic example of that. I'm not saying that this was a coordinated hit at a high level, but what's happened is they've seen the news break and they've seen some people grumbling about Kash Patel, and they're like, hey, we can leverage this reaction. We can make use of this reaction and turn that into our action, turn that into something that takes us closer to where we want to go. And it's a form of Hegelian dialectic. You're correct in the sense of it's problem, reaction, solution. Now, a proper Hegelian dialectic, they've already come up with the solution in advance. This is more reactive. This is more about saying, hey, how do we manipulate the reaction to something that's happened that wasn't in our control? How do we manipulate that reaction to get what we want? And it's just as disgusting, but we need to be really, really aware that these opportunists have no conscience, they have no shame, and nothing is off limits. The fact that a good man, a husband and a father who was a peaceful man committed to dialogue was just murdered in cold blood doesn't change the fact that they're going to look for opportunities and angles.
And that's why I get quite frustrated often with our own audiences. Not to be nasty to you guys, but when, you shouldn't talk like that, and, oh, no, maybe think about this and don't swear. Guys, gloves are off. Gloves, you are not dealing with people who think the way we do, who are rational the way we are, who generally want a good outcome for all. These are people who, should they have the means, would make sure Topher and I were silenced. And that's what's quite interesting. So back on this Abby thing, right? I don't disagree that she would be getting some hate, for sure. You're a public figure, firstly. And on top of that, you're a polarizing public figure. So it goes with the territory. And, as you've said to me, as G said to me, if you don't like the heat, get out of the kitchen. And you're right. Like, there is a part of this that, I come onto this podcast twice a week. I now understand that's part of it. All right. And you make peace with it. and if you can't, get out. But with Abby, she in recent weeks, and I was going to make a video on this, and the only reason I haven't is because I just don't want the drama from her audience. But then I'm like, well, I'm kind of being a hypocrite, right? But
yeah.
Last week, Abby and her boyfriend put up a video asking the protest, or saying that the protesters need to die.
Yep.
Don't procreate. We are Nazis. We are bigots. We are a scourge on Australia, and we need to die. Adam Hyde from Peking Duck literally said that on video just last week.
Yep.
A couple of weeks prior to that, Abby Chatfield with her fingers. Why haven't you done it yet?
Yep.
Why haven't you done it yet?
Yep.
That's what she was doing. Now, she didn't say Trump's name, but she implied that all the incels, all the little men that, can't get a woman, sorry, should go and assassinate the president, and then they're going to get fan mail. That was content Abby Chatfield thought about, sat down, put her phone in front of her, filmed it, and then went, yep, I'm going to put that on the internet. So if you're going to do that, Abby, you need to understand no one's going to tell you not to do it. Apparently, you don't have very good people in your life, because your boyfriend, your mother, your best friend should be stopping you from doing that, because you look deranged. You look psychotic, and you might not think this yet, but you have put a finishing bullet into your career. You are done. Peak woke is done. The left is dying. You won't get a job again. I don't think you realize that. You think you still have influence, but it's dying, right? So Abby is making these conscious decisions, and everyone seems to forget about free will. Oh, I had a mental episode. But you can sit down with the Prime Minister in one breath.
That's right.
But the next minute, you get a bit of pushback. It's a mental episode. Fuck off. Sorry. Yeah. So these people need to be called out. They need to. You need to talk about them, right? Abby doing the gun thing, and then in other videos, the one that we watched on the podcast where she's basically tweaking out of her head.
Yeah.
These videos need to be played. We need to address them, because it's your Abby Chatfields who are indoctrinating other people. It's the reason we have people like the killer of Charlie Kirk. They are hanging out in Discords, in Reddit forums, on Tattle Life pages. That's where they're learning this shit.
Yeah.
So, people might think culture's beneath them. Oh, I don't want to talk about these people, but you have to. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Now, can we be a little more positive? Because not to make light of what's happened to Charlie, but there are some fantastic silver linings coming out. If we just accept the price has been paid, Charlie's life has been taken, that's a given. What would we hope to see going forward from that? And what we would hope to see is exactly what we are seeing. It's genuinely incredible. And I think the timing of this is phenomenal, in the sense that it's turned what was going to be a slow transition. A huge social movement has been building for a little while. We've talked about it relentlessly. I mentioned it earlier in this podcast. That has been put onto steroids. That has been absolutely turbocharged. And people started posting up that, you remember the Je suis Charlie that happened after the Charlie Hebdo attacks in France, where people were saying, we are Charlie, and standing in solidarity with them as victims of an Islamic terrorist attack. People started reposting that, and then, of course, not everyone understood what that meant, because it got a bunch of kids on the internet that weren't around back then, and so people just started posting, "I am Charlie." And there's an enormous number of people that are either overtly in big ways, or quietly in smaller ways, resolving to make changes in their lives. Mm-hmm. This was a bloke who said, short of becoming a Christian, giving your life to God and getting right with God so that you can go to heaven, short of that, get a good job, work hard, or start a business, whatever you want to do, get married, have kids, right? That was the life that he advocated. And in a very real sense, he provided a lot of young people a role model of what it looked like if you lived the way that Jordan Peterson advocated for. And I don't think that was necessarily on purpose, but Jordan Peterson advocates for make your bed, take responsibility, become useful, face your demons, face your dragons. That's what he advocated. And of course, he's an old man now. He's into his twilight years. And so for younger people, that's very detached. That's very distant. In Charlie Kirk, they saw someone who, whether on purpose and overtly or not, I'm not quite sure, but in practice, he was living what Jordan Peterson was advocating. He became that role model. And him being slain has turned him into a figure who will never age. He will forever be that. Now, let's not forget, He was he was 6.5 feet tall, 6'5" or something crazy like that. Physically fit, skinnier than me, that's for sure. Married a model, winner of, was it Miss Alabama or one of those state competitions, beauty pageants. Had 2 beautiful kids, phenomenally successful in business, incredibly influential globally. And he will forever be that person in their minds. That is now the aspirational figure that has been seared into their minds like a brand. And again, just talking silver linings, taking nothing away from the tragedy of what's happened. But if we accept that that's happened, this as a silver lining is phenomenally good and is going to accelerate so much of what you and I have talked about.
I'm just going to bring up this comment because when you said twilight years, I said the same thing.
Okay.
I'm like, he's only 63.
All right. He looks a little bit older than that, but you're right. Okay, twilight years is a bit much.
To be fair, he's had a. But okay, to speak to this point, like there are some very beautiful videos, and I'm grateful for them. Gia was showing me one before where it was this young man whose wife had bought him a suit, and he was wearing the suit, and he looked very dapper, and he's like, I'm not used. Southern man. He's like, I'm not used to dressing like this. My wife bought me this. He didn't sound like Forrest Gump, but Southern. I should stay away from the accent. I butcher every single one. Anyway, and he was saying like, I feel really proud. My wife made me feel this way. I like wearing this suit, and I'm going to wear this suit to church. Yeah. And I was like, I as you know, I'm not particularly religious, but all this has done is made men, I think collectively, and more conservative leaning women stand an extra inch taller. And that's 100%. What we needed. Yeah. We needed people to put their shoulders back and stand up a little bit more. And I think you see that now. And like I said, when we opened the show, I think a lot of more moderate left-leaning people have looked around and gone, this is not the company I want to keep. I don't want to be on the team that celebrates and champions murder. And I think what it's going to do is push a lot of people back towards more centrist views. Look, put it this way. The left is never going to join the right. The right's never going to join the left. But we can coexist. We can, and we did for a very long time. It's the extremes. It's the fringe. It's the people who get radicalized. And that's unfortunately where the conversation lands. So...
But what's important, though, Carly, is that the left have been very good at co-opting the language of peace. They talk about tolerance. They talk about love. They talk about acceptance. They talk about all of those things. And someone made a great comment. It wasn't about left and right. It was they said hippies are mean people cosplaying as nice people, and metalheads are nice people cosplaying as mean people. I think it's hilarious. This is sort of a musical and a cultural observation. I can't remember. It wasn't me. I can't claim credit for it.
Though.
It's very accurate. And I think the same is true of those people. The more someone uses the word tolerance, the more we should be cautious about them. But there's a lot of people that were sucked in. And there's a lot of people that mask has kind of been, or that facade has been stripped away. And this is one of the reasons why I am a free speech absolutist. And people get upset with me. Oh, but what about anti-Semitism or other sort of, what about threats? We shouldn't allow people to do that. No, we should. Because if people are going to make threats, I would like them to make those threats so I know who they are, where they are. I can stop doing business with them. I can fire them if they're one of my employees. I can leave the company if it's one of my bosses. And people confuse freedom of speech with freedom from consequences. And you were commenting on this earlier, Carly. The fact that there are consequences to what you say is not a violation of your right to freedom of speech. And I've just done a video on this that'll go out tomorrow. The way human rights work is very, very specific. The right to freedom of speech is a right to not have someone stop you from saying it. That's where your right ends. Beyond that point, once it's been said, people are free to respond. And by the way, there's more human rights than just the right to speech. There is, for example, the right to freedom of association. That is the right to be able to choose who you hang out with, who you work for, who works for you. Those human rights are still in play, and people can exercise those human rights in response to you exercising your human right. And that is not a violation of your right. You got to speak. Congratulations. You exercise your human right. And now you can go to Centrelink and go and find a new job. No one has violated your rights at that point. Now, I want to add one final comment on this because people say, oh, this is cancel culture and you are against cancel culture. In my case, no, I wasn't. This is the beautiful thing about being a libertarian rather than a kind of a partisan conservative or whatever. Not that all conservatives are partisan, but many of them are. I stand on principle. I've said all the way through, these mega corporations, these networks that are firing comedians and whatever because they said the thing that you're not allowed to say, they're allowed to do that. I think it's a terrible idea. I think it backfires, and I think we're seeing that with a lot of these networks, and a lot of those people that got canceled are actually doing really well now because they found other avenues. I don't think it's a good tool. It's a very blunt instrument, and it usually fails. But you're allowed to do that. And I've been consistent on that all the way through all the cancel culture of the 2020s and so forth. I'll be like, I think it's a bad idea. I don't think it's going to work out the way you think it is. But yeah, you can do that. Absolutely, you can. Where I draw the line is the government canceling. They can't do that. The government is restricted by human rights. The government is not a person. The government does not have any rights. Only people have rights. And so they can't claim, oh, well, you're violating my rights. No, sorry, you're a corporation. Corporations don't have rights in the same way that human beings do. So yeah, freedom of speech. You can say the vile thing online. And I want you to say the vile thing online because I want that mask to come off. I want to know who I'm surrounded by and who I need to keep an eye on and who I can trust. And moments like this, I mean, COVID did that in a big way. Moments like this do that as well. And we now know who's who, and we can respond accordingly.
I'm just reading some of the comments here, and a lot of people saying, like, how do we come back together, whatever. And I think the answer to this is, and I'm going to go on a bit of a roundabout tangent, but you know the quote that it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war?
Yeah.
The problem is, at the moment, people who are gardeners are encouraging war. And if they find themselves in that war, they will be useless. And that, for the most part, I'm speaking about the progressive left. They are, the rambunctious, fringe, marginalized, misfits, right? When you think of high school, that's exactly who they are. And these are the people like, yeah, let's go to war. And it's like what you have on the right are people who are quite disciplined, people who have pride in what they do, who understand the value of time, understand the value of money, and they understand, how to use that accordingly. And the left, they spend a lot of their time going to protests and participating in little Marxist think tanks and things like that, and being on social media, right? And that's fine.
And being unproductive.
And being overly unproductive. And that's fine. That's your prerogative to do so. And as you're finding out, you have now woken the beast. You have walked into the lion's den, and you should be fearful. You should be worried. Not because we're going to physically harm you, let me be very clear, but because you have awoken the warriors that were peacefully in the garden. Yeah. And that's how I feel. And before I came on here tonight, I had to go and take myself to the gym. That's how I manage my rage. I get rage sprints. Yeah. And I was like, get it out, because you're going on a live podcast. What is there, like 1,400 people watching right now?
Yeah, nearly 15, yeah.
Be mindful. Don't say something stupid. Someone will clip it and it'll come back to bite you. And it's hard because I'm a woman and I do get emotional, and I'm also pretty angry. But then I have to remember that a warrior in a garden isn't going out there reminding everyone they're a warrior. They're just standing there enjoying the garden. So that's what I encourage you guys. Yeah. This is where you sharpen your tools. And I don't mean your weapons. I mean your tools. I mean your brain. I mean your speech. Because for too long, we have put those tools down and just let people run around tearing up the garden. No longer.
Yeah. So CJ Westman, you are on absolute fire tonight. You've come up with some ripper comments, and this is another great one. And it speaks to exactly what you were just talking about. People have a Hollywood idea of civil war. It's basements, power drills, and kneecaps. It's pits full of men, women, and children covered in lime. Civil war is anything but civil. Absolutely. And this is why my crusade has been to educate people on civil disobedience, because that really does become the last line before things actually get rough. And I never want to get to that point. I don't want to live in a country that is actually enduring genuine political violence, let alone an actual civil war. That is hell. That is one of the worst situations you can find yourself in, for exactly the reasons that you describe. And so we need to sharpen our tools. Again, not the weapons of war, but to echo what Carly was just saying, our ability to debate. But importantly, the thing that I tried to bring out in my tribute to Charlie Kirk was that he wasn't an arguer. He was a debater. And the core thing that he did, which I've always tried to do in my work, never as successfully, Charlie was a master of the art, is to meet people where they're at and find those threads of agreement. and then start there. See, the temptation when someone says something that you disagree with is to start with the point at which you're furthest apart and to say, well, I'm over here. And now you've created animosity, you've created a standoff. But actually, the way to influence people, the way to persuade people is to find the area where you agree. Now, where we often agree on all sides of the political aisle is at the highest level outcomes that we want. So even a Marxist will say, I just want poor people to be able to live better. Right? Now, the mechanism they want to do that with is going to cause poor people to be in absolute poverty and starvation. And all of their solutions are completely wrong, but their objective is right. And so we can meet them at the objective and say, hey, so do I. That's amazing. You know, what was it that you experienced that made you care so much about this? Find that point of common ground and start there, and then you can move from there. But if dialogue fails, it's not straight to civil war. And this is really important. There's dialogue, there's cultural processes, there's political processes, then there's civil disobedience. And this is a really important step on the non-violent ladder. And one of the reasons why I talk about it so much, I've literally written books about it, is because this is the last kind of line. And we need to make the most of that in order to maximize the chance that we can avoid taking that next step to a place where I certainly don't want to go. So civil disobedience and understanding how to do it well, how to do it in a way that's non-escalatory, that doesn't then push you closer to an actual shooting match of some sort, how to be that warrior in the garden, as to use that analogy, and not be reaching for the weapons every time something goes wrong. It's like there are other stages that we can go through. And it's really important, I think, to educate ourselves and each other on all of that now, because there are going to be people that for their own reasons or because of their own psychology, they want to jump straight to the ugly stuff. And they have no idea the Pandora's box that opens, and that nobody wins when that happens.
Yeah, look, and I am reading some of the comments here. There's some people who are self-confessed far right, which again, I'll treat them the same way as I treat the left. Like, you can say what you want to say. I'm not your mouthpiece. And if you think I'm going to be sitting there reading out your comments, I won't. But that's not how you win. You don't win by swinging the pendulum as far as you can to the other side. You know, at the core of all of this, you have the normies in between. And ultimately, that's who you have to win over, right? That's who you have to get.
Whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not.
Right? And so my frustration with this is people go, well, fuck them. Let's grab our pitchforks. And it's like, and then what? And then what? You retaliate with violence. Yeah. And then guess what? The people that you want to persuade, they go the other way again, right? So, and this is why all the calls for civil war and all this sort of stuff, I'm like, and go read a history book.
Yeah.
You know, then what follows is anarchy. It's not, civil war and then we win. It's general anarchy. And then you have to, like, look what's happening in Nepal. You know, like, they've just overthrown their government. And now through Discord, they've elected a government, you know, the Gen Z way. That will last, if they're lucky, a couple of months. And they'll be back there again. I don't say that because I want that to happen, because as always, absolute power corrupts absolutely. There are going to be people who are in there for the wrong reasons, who want the political control. And yes, Nepal had a lot of issues, and I understand why they wanted to overthrow their government. But what happens next is chaos.
Yeah. And this is so important to realize that breaking something isn't automatically better. And that is a very left sort of worldview. We tear it down. Then what? Oh, well, we'll build something out of the ashes. And I do hear that on the extreme right as well. Like, they're fed up with trying to do things with the political system or what have you. We just got to tear the whole thing down. And then what question is a really important one. I put out a challenge some time ago that I haven't repeated for a while, so it might take me a moment to remember exactly how it worked. But essentially, it was during COVID, and a lot of these, tear it all down types were very active online. And I would say to them, explain to me a chain of events that involves tearing it all down, that leads to a place better than where we are, that doesn't have bloodshed somewhere in its arc, right? Show me that. It's got a better than 50% chance of ending up in a better place and doesn't involve people dying along the way, right? And no one ever bothered to even reply, because I think they kind of went, oh, well, my whole idea is that people die. I'm like, well, at that point, is there really a difference between you and someone like a Karl Marx, who basically believed that you could kill your way into a perfect society? If your society isn't perfect yet, you haven't killed enough people. Let's just kill a few more. And Stalin, as you well know, you've looked into him a lot. he sort of embodied that and lived that out. That's a nobody wins scenario. And so we do, unfortunately, have to engage with all of the available processes. One of the things that is super important to always have front and center is civilization is an anomaly. Civilization is actually something that has required an enormous amount of hard work to build and develop and to maintain. It's not something that maintains itself. The law of entropy applies to social organization, to government, to civilization, to culture. It takes effort and work to continuously be propping it back up and supporting it and rebuilding the bits that break and making it better. The reason why we think that this is normal, what we have is normal, is because of the hard work, blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice of generation after generation of people going back literally thousands of years that have carved civilization out of the unrelenting dirt and rock and the blood, sweat, and tears of literally thousands of years, building one block on top of another. We arrive at whatever your birth year was and go, oh, so this is normal life. No. This is an incredible achievement. And if we just start running around and saying, well, we're just going to change things radically, I'm sorry, that very rarely ends up well. It's that saying, don't tear down a fence until you first understand why it was built. Right? Don't tear down a part of a civilization, whether that's political or cultural, etc. Don't tear something down until you understand why it was there in the first place, because whoever built it had a reason for putting it there. And so anyone, no matter what side of politics they're on, if you're in a tear it down frame of mind, can I really encourage you to unplug from the internet for a couple of weeks and go touch grass? All right. And actually just have a look around and realize we live in a miracle. Our everyday life, if you're in Australia with access to the internet, your life is a miracle. It is incredible. Yeah. Can I actually, no, I'll let you talk because I've talked for a little while, but there's a story that I'll debate in my head whether I tell it or not while you talk.
Okay. It's not the man in Caracas, is it?
No, it's not the man in Caracas. It's to do with how I reframed prosperity in my head and learned how to be grateful pretty much no matter where I'm at. But anyway.
All right. Well, we'll come to that. But I want to touch on this comment from Katie. Katie sent us
I just overwrote it.
That's all right. Katie sent us quite a couple of comments. So I just want to talk about that for a second. Firstly, she said, our government process is good. We just need more good people in government. Now, for those of you who watch the actual podcast that comes out on Wednesdays, you often hear me speak about this. And I want to give you a bit of a pep talk. I know you often hear me going off and being spicy, Carlz, but this is where you really need to dig deep and become excellent. And I don't care what you do. Whatever it is that you do, if you drive garbage trucks, if you're a gardener, if you're a paper pusher in a company somewhere, middle management, I don't care what it is that you do. This is my call to arms. Become truly exceptional. Even if it's not a job you're overly passionate about. Be the best employee they have. Be the person that arrives on time, if not early, and leaves a little bit later. Be the person that sees the rubbish on the floor and picks it up. Be the person who does the thing that's not necessarily their job, but knows it will be helpful if it's done. Go above and beyond. Say hello to everyone. Now you're going to be like, Carly, what does this achieve? How does this help? What it does is collectively bring up the vibration, because you know what's really hard? To not catch the contagious laughter and happiness that emanates in a room of people behaving like that. At the moment, the rooms are people who have nothing but disdain for their jobs, the world we live in. It's not my job. It's all too hard. I'm not paid enough. Can't be bothered. I have a mental health problem. I need to, Susie, I don't like her. Susie can do it because fuck her. That's the attitude. Now, I've shared a lot of this stuff. I put a story up on last week about chicken in the noodle aisle. So if you guys have heard this before, maybe this can be part of the drinking game, but I'll just want to explain the concept to those who might not have seen it. Chicken in the noodle aisle is a observation that I've noticed as a photographer, and I've become completely infatuated with this. What it refers to is the first time I saw it was a packet of chicken tenderloins that were discarded in the Asian noodle aisle section of the supermarket. And I was literally reaching out to grab some noodles, and I noticed it, and I thought, who is that self-important? That's so, what's the word? I'm trying not to swear. the person who cares the least about everyone else around them that had the
Yeah.
gumption to do that, to discard the chicken like that, knowing
Yeah.
full well that it will be thrown out because no one
Yeah.
wants to eat the warm chicken, right? And so from that moment on, I then couldn't unnotice it. And I'm talking about displaced groceries in the supermarket. And so from this is what breeds chaos. It's the small things. It's the little things that go unnoticed. It's the little things that people go, not my problem, too hard basket. So this is my call to arms. This is where we become incredibly skilled, incredibly hardworking. And some of you go, oh, I do work hard. I bet you don't. I bet you walk past the trash when you see it and it would take you all of a second to pick it up and put it in the bin, but you don't because you go, it's not my problem. Or you see Susie over there who you can't stand because she's a bit of a mole, but you know that if you do that one thing, not only would it help Susie, it'll help the whole workplace. Just collectively, if I can sum this up in one comment, let's just stop being cunts. Let's actually care again. Because that will collectively, have I played that video yet? Have I played the chicken in the noodle aisle video yet?
I don't think you've played the video, but can I just put you on notice? I'm going to touch base with G next week and see whether you've gone above and beyond, whether you're practicing what you preach during this week. You're on the you're under the microscope now.
Okay, I'm going to play you a video because I think it's worth it because I'm probably not explaining myself as well. So these little videos, I actually put a lot of effort into them because I researched the shit out of them. But I thought this was important because it's pretty indicative of how we got to where we are and why we are where we are. And, you know, people are like, how did it get to this? Well, I'll show you how we got to it. I'll show you. This is how. It's not about, you know, all of a sudden people just got indoctrinated. It's no, people just stopped caring. People have literally gotten to the point where, you know, I've talked about G's apprentice. He's 24. He could not give less of a fuck. He just does not care. And that's bred into you by, you know, you don't have to try at work. And we've talked about this a lot, you know, trophies for just rocking up and things like that. I actually think the revolution is in people deeply caring again. So I've got the video. Hang on. Let me show you.
So what we need as a companion to this video, we need a new shirt design. It's the chicken in the noodle aisle. And
that would be a great shirt.
That can become an idiom for whenever we look at something and it's like, this is the decay of civilization. It's the chicken in the noodle aisle.
Yeah, 100%. And now, like I said, this is like a little movement. And I'm building a website around this because this is a thing. I promise you, I am going to actually go down this path and make this a thing. Because imagine that all of a sudden, the supermarket aisles aren't full of randomly abandoned items anymore.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Yeah.
All of the staff at the supermarket will immediately have a little bit more time to do something else, like maybe customer service. Maybe they're not resenting the customers anymore. And you see, it's the butterfly effect, right? So anyway,
can I make a comment on that? I was walking down the refrigerated section looking for the particular Greek yogurt that I like to have with some banana. That's my lunch these days. And I saw they have the boxes. So they're displayed in the boxes now. The front of the box has been torn out and they've got the things in there. And I saw that I could have grabbed one from near the front, but next to it, there was a row of them that was sort of almost emptied to the back. And there was one sitting all the way back in like that second layer box down the back of that refrigerated section. And so I just reached in and grabbed that one out, leaving an empty box behind. And I literally heard the guy who was stacking the shelves. He had his cage there with all his stuff, literally just mumbling to himself, oh, finally. And I just thought, that's one less time you have to bend down. Like for me, I bent down once. For him, he's bending down 1,000 times in a shift. And that's one less time he has to do that and reach in. And it's just that little tiny kindness that just, you know, we never even spoke to each other, but it meant something to him.
Yeah. And it's funny, like this little ethnography, they call it, that I've come up with. I posted the video and I had a professor from a prestigious university message me saying, you're onto something, like dig deep, go down this because this is a thing. So let me play it to you guys. Hang on. Let me share this and then I'll just refresh it. chaos right now, and perhaps we only have ourselves to blame. As the saying goes, the standard we walk past is the standard we're willing to accept. So if we're willing to accept chicken in the noodle aisle, that sows the inevitable seed of cultural collapse. So let's talk about it. You may have heard the expression, dirt is just matter out of place, coined by British anthropologist Mary Douglas. She argued that dirt doesn't exist in itself. It only becomes dirt when it's not where it should be. So with that all in mind, I'd like to introduce you to a photographic ethnography that I've been working on called Chicken in the Noodle Aisle. It's part photography project, part anthropological study, where I'm documenting the absurdity and deep meaning of misplaced groceries in the supermarket and how this mirrors a cultural collapse. And before I lose you, remember that history shows us that chaos doesn't arrive all at once. It's bred in the small acts of neglect we excuse every day. This all began when I noticed a packet of chicken tenderloins discarded in the noodle aisle at my local Woolies. I started sharing these photos on social media, and in the comments, people said, don't be too judgmental. This could be a busy mother, someone who is distracted, but I would argue that's precisely the problem. You may be familiar with the shopping trolley theory, where returning your shopping trolley is the ultimate test of morality. There's no punishment if you don't return it, and there's no reward if you do. It's simply the right thing to do. And this theory determines whether or not you're a good or a bad person, dependent on whether you can self-govern. It argues that those who fail to return their shopping trolleys will only do the right thing when threatened by law and the force behind it. So if you've made it this far, let's unpack what discarded miscellaneous items in the supermarket means and how this can lead to societal collapse. This is a really dark metaphor for where we have arrived culturally. We now live in a society where the desires of an individual outweigh the obligations of a collective. This is ultimately saying that my time is more valuable than your labor. And there's always someone that pays the price, whether it's the staff member who has to rearrange the grocery store, or it's the business losing the money because they have to throw it out, or of course, the general waste of food. Zygmunt Bauman called this the condition of liquid modernity, where we live in a world where responsibilities are temporary and obligations are easily shared. Hannah Arendt went on to warn us that the smallest acts of thoughtlessness, repeated and accumulated, become impossible to undo. Therefore, chicken in the noodle aisle has become a cultural mirror. It shows us who we've become. We stopped caring long ago. Sentiments like, it's not my job, it's not my problem, have become the norm. And that quiet apathy leads to the dilapidation of our spaces, our systems, and ultimately our culture. Nothing collapses all at once. It happens piece by piece through neglect. And that's the whole point of this. The world doesn't just collapse because of one great catastrophe, but because of the small responsibilities that we have abandoned. When we excuse the little things, we invite the big things to fall apart. So chicken in the noodle aisle isn't just misplaced groceries, it's misplaced responsibility. So maybe it's time we course correct and relearn the discipline required to return things where they belong. And remember that civilization is built or undone in the smallest of acts. So now that I've pointed it out, you won't be able to unsee it, and this is going to haunt you. Now, on that, I just saw a comment and I just want to pull it up.
I knew you were going to pull this one up. I knew this would get under your skin.
You are the problem, Stephen. You are the problem. You are the chaos. You are the chicken in the noodle aisle. This attitude is pathetic. This is a weak mindset. Oh, corporate profits. What? People actually having some fucking common decency. That's bad for the world, is it? That's bad. Someone actually going, hey, I picked up this chicken, but I'm too fucking lazy to walk it 400 for like 400 steps over there to put it fucking back.
That's
I'm more important. Sorry, you know, like 40 steps, whatever.
I'd get my 10,000 steps up if I shopped in that supermarket. I tell you what.
Well, you know what I mean. Like, so someone's walked from the cold section into fucking whatever.
No, I get it. I get it.
So that's you. You are the problem, Stephen. You are literally why the profits keep shrinking. Therefore, the prices keep going up because they're throwing out the food that you're too lazy to put back. You are literally ground zero for this disdain of just consideration and thoughtfulness.
So what I absolutely love about this is that 1,600 people have now been introduced to the idiom chicken in the noodle aisle. And I'm with you. I think there's something in this. I look forward to where this project goes. This is all you, Carly. This is not us. This is a you thing. I look forward to updates as it progresses. And I think, honestly, we need to introduce that idiom. That is an expression that captures this idea. But also, can I just say, this has got to be one of the most hilarious butterfly effect arguments that I've ever heard. Chicken in the noodle aisle causing civilizational collapse. I don't think you're wrong, but those are not two things that I would ever have consciously connected.
But when you can back it up with statistical data and research, whew, it carries a little bit more weight. This is the thing, and I know I joke about this, and guys, grab your drinks because I'm about to say the word. This is why I believe those of you who are inclined to, be a little bit academic, go back to uni. This is what we need to do. We need to take back the fucking universities because, I've been shopping around for a supervisor for my PhD, and I was going to do AI and beauty standards. But this idiom, this chicken in the noodle aisle thing, everyone's like, that's the thing. Go do the PhD in that. And it sounds so silly, right? But what it is actually looking at everyday commonalities that we overlook as to how we get so politically charged, so pushed to what could be seen as, civil collapse.
Yeah.
It's not the big sweeping things. It's the little stuff. Continue.
All right. Can we have a change of tempo here? There's a super chat that I've been sitting on for a little while. Have you seen the footage of Irania Zarutska, the footage and the offender's history? It could have easily been a story from Melbourne. This is exactly correct. It is only because none of the offenders walking free around Melbourne have decided to do this yet that this hasn't happened on a Melbourne train or bus or tram. And Carly, you've made the point to me that in 1 week, anyone who's active on social media, as you and I both have to be because of what we do, we've witnessed real actual footage of 3 different murders. One was the youth who was cut down via machete in the western suburbs of Melbourne. Another was Irania Zarutska being stabbed to death on a train. And the third one was Charlie being shot by an assassin. And I can remember when I was a teenager, when I was into my early 20s, I was really into war movies. Saving Private Ryan came out during that time. And every war movie I wanted to watch, every action movie I wanted to watch. And then I think it was around about the time that HBO released Band of Brothers, the original Band of Brothers. And I watched that from start to finish. Brilliant series. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor. It is a phenomenally brilliant series. And I realized I was having a really hard time with the death, with the blood, with all the stuff that used to excite me. I wanted to go and see Saving Private Ryan because it was going to be the goriest movie I'd ever seen. And everyone had heard about the opening scene, right? That's what I wanted. And as I'm watching, I guess this is maturity. I guess this is just age kicking in and a bit more life perspective. Just starting to go, actually, no thanks. I don't really want that. And I no longer watch entertainment that involves that. I don't play computer games, but if I were to play computer games now, it wouldn't be the first person run and gun shooters with all the blood turned up to maximum that I used to play. And yet social media has now meant that this stuff that it would have once upon a time, it would have appeared on the news with a blur over it, or they would have announced that it had happened and used file footage of a previous speaking event or something like that. Now we see the entire thing. And the challenge now, if I can just finish this, the challenge now is how do you stay soft and soft-hearted whilst not cutting yourself off? Like, you and I don't have the option of cutting ourselves off from this stuff. But how do you balance between remaining soft-hearted and not becoming callous and cold to this, but also not being destroyed by it? Because like you said to me before the show, like we've witnessed 3 real actual murders just this week.
I made the comment and I was being facetious, but I'll say it again. It feels like we're living in a real life snuff movie. And what I mean by that is, to use the left's word, I've never offered consent to wake up without even having had my morning coffee and seeing someone bleed out from a neck wound. I don't want to live in a world where that's my normal. And for some reason, we've accepted this as normal. The Irina murder, most people were kind enough to stop just before he stabbed her. And then sure enough, people, went above and beyond to get the rest of the footage, and people were looking at him stabbing her. What I was most taken aback by was the genuine fear when she turned around and looked him dead in the eyes. Yeah. And all I could think is, I can't even imagine what that feeling must have been like. She didn't obviously reconcile with the fact that she'd been stabbed and she was bleeding to death. She looked up and she looked evil in the eye, and that was the last thing she saw before she collapsed to the ground. And that kind of macabre footage should be like once in a lifetime you see that. It's like, I remember not long after I got my P plates, I saw a horrific car accident and the person was decapitated. And I was one of the first on scene. And I've never gotten past it. It was one of those things that it'll stay with me till the day I die. And, you know, you don't expect to ever see something like that. No one prepares you to see something like that. And that was, God, 20 years ago. I still think about it. And I still think about the person's family, and I still think about the poor policeman and all the people who had to be there to do the thing. Whereas now, in 1 week, we can all collectively spectate on 3 murders, and then without even a consideration, firstly for the victim and then the family of the victim, we're so quick to post our hot takes, to screenshot it, to send it to everyone. That's how fucking barbaric we behave now.
Yeah.
It's a level of callousness. You know, we have total disregard for human life now. And then it's immediately met with the whataboutisms. Well, what about Gaza? What about Ukraine? What about this crime? It's all bad. But if you can't put all that shit aside for 1 fucking minute and allow people to mourn the loss of someone that died in cold blood, you are heartless. You're just as cruel as the murderer.
Yeah. Now, can we get to something a little less heavy, because there are other things happening in the world? I think we should touch on. I don't know how you come
back from that.
Well, yeah, I just don't want to revel in it the whole time. We're an hour and 15 minutes in, and it's been a heavy show. I wanted to talk about the Tommy Robinson March in London, because that is phenomenal. I'm going to load up a video here. It'll take me a minute to get to. But Carly, you and I both experienced the pro-Palestine rallies in London shortly after the October 7th attacks a couple of years ago. We were in London for the launch of the Ark in London. Yeah. And I went there with Rukshan. He was covering it, and he did a great job. And, you know, we weren't necessarily recognized there, and he was able to sort of fit in. And that was a really interesting day watching that unfold. And that was a massive crowd. You and actually my wife and my daughter, who was in London with me, got caught at the other end of the march. And it was a long way away. It was a very, very large crowd of people. There were reports of 100,000 people, and I could believe that. But I'm just going to play this video because this is some aerial footage. And what I want you to do is, number one, notice how many people you can see, but also realize when the crowd spears off to the sides and how many people you still can't see in those directions as well. And just have a think about just the sheer scale of this event and how long this shot goes on and on and on for. And, you know, those people aren't packed shoulder to shoulder, but they're pretty well packed in. And this shot just continues. And if you know London, I don't know exactly where this is, but we'll get to an iconic building that I do recognize. I can't remember the name of the street, but I do know roughly where this happened in London. Those aren't narrow streets. Those are pretty decent boulevards in London. And it just keeps going down and down and down. And obviously there aren't any sort of side streets through that section there. But as we get here, you'll see a side street with not many people in it, but then we're going to get to a large junction. And it just keeps going. The density now is really high. People really are packed shoulder to shoulder now. I think we're getting closer to the front of the march here. All the way under these trees, it just keeps going and going. And you just watch and just think about how many people we've just seen. So there's that side street with not many people. I think that goes into a building. That's why there's not many people there. But now watch it zoom out, right? And this crowd goes back behind buildings in every direction and behind, down streets in every single direction. And that's pretty much the end of the video. We don't know how much further does it go in any one of those directions. Now, this has been reported as 100,000 people. That strikes me as a pretty light number.
Oh, look, I mean, that's classic mainstream media. But I want to bring up Piers Morgan because he's been wrong on every take, yet still tries to center himself in the conversation as like a moderate. I think Piers Morgan was saying that, this is 100,000 at most. Well, right. The wonderful thing about social media and independent media, like obviously people in the comments are saying Avi and Rukshan are there. is
Yep.
that you can only get away with these lies for so long.
Yeah.
Anyone that was within the vicinity of that march would have seen these people. And, when we were there in 2023, when the pro-Palestine march happened in London. So what happened with me and your wife? I was with your wife and Flossie.
Yeah.
We were on a boat. We were going down the Thames,
The Thames. Yeah.
the Thames, and we were getting off. We were going to see the Crown Jewels. I think we were going to the Tower. Tower of London, and we got off, or we docked, and there was no way to avoid it. Like along the whole river, this march was going on. And the guy said to us, like, "You've got to get off here because there's nowhere else to get off." And so I think that got us off, like literally, sort of dead center in it. And we had to walk through the march. And look, to be fair, it was peaceful. There wasn't any. We didn't see any violence. What we did see was the socialists trying to sell their buttons and books, which I thought was hilarious.
That was very funny.
But yeah, when you're in a crowd like that, and I think it was reported it was over 100,000, which I'd say, it was big. It felt big. So if you're in London and you're seeing that protest, or you're somewhere around it, there's no way that, you're going to believe this whole 100,000 crap. And all the mainstream media is doing, or the legacy media is doing, is sowing even more seeds of doubt. They're so disingenuous. They lie about everything. They gaslight you. And I mean, they're dying. We know they're dying. Piers Morgan will be out of a job within a few years anyway. I say keep going. Double down, Piers. Keep going.
And what's awesome is what we're seeing in the UK is a reclaiming of their heritage, and there's bad elements to it as well. I'm not a white nationalist. I'm not in that crowd at all, but there is a need for us to have an identity. And that identity doesn't have to be based on the color of our skin. That identity, in fact, shouldn't be based on the color of our skin. It should be based on what we believe. And what I'm seeing as I look online is, there's the fringe elements that the mainstream media want to focus on. They want to pretend that it's all about these people. But actually, for a lot of people, it's actually just about reclaiming what it meant to be British. And what it meant was a country that was built on the rule of law, the concept of Rex Lex. The law is king. Everyone is subservient to the law. The idea that the government is a servant and not a master. We call them public servants in the Westminster system, in Western society. We have that name for government employees because of that heritage that we inherited out of England, of this idea that the government is your servant. The prime minister is not the top. He's actually the biggest of the ministers, of the people that minister to us, that serve us. These, sort of basic concepts around human rights, and we talked about those earlier with freedom of speech and freedom of association, the right to a fair trial. All of these things, again, these didn't happen by accident. These were the fruit of generations of people, sometimes having to fight civil wars, having to dethrone kings that wanted to become emperors. And, this whole history of humanity led to the development of these ideas. And those ideas are worth protecting and worth standing for. And, a lot of the people that are going to these marches, that's why they're going. That is what they're there for. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to see. The other thing that we're seeing, which is awesome, is that the Blade Runners have not stopped in the UK. I don't have any video of this, but the Blade Runners, so for those that don't know, this emerged out of a trial, essentially a 15-minute city trial. That's my opinion. They say it's not. But essentially, Oxford City put in a bunch of cameras that would monitor your Oxford City trial was different. The ULEZ zones were in London. In London, Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, put in these cameras to create an ultra low emissions zone. And what that was about was basically, if you had an electric car, you could drive wherever you wanted, whenever you wanted, it was fine. If you had a diesel burning car, like if you were a tradie with a ute, then you couldn't drive into the city past these cameras outside of certain hours, or sometimes not at all, without paying a fee, which is essentially a fine. And it amounted, I think, to about $12 Australian every day that you go in, I think it was, which adds up a lot.
Elitist fucking policy. Yeah.
And they say, oh, well, you should take the tube. Oh, yeah, and bring all my tools on the tube, right? Or not everyone's rich enough to live near the tube. Now, London's pretty good, but not everyone's rich enough, right? Some people live outside of the outskirts of London. So you're dead right. It's this elitist policy. But what happened was ordinary people sprung into action. It was amazing to watch. So some people would go and they would scope out, where are these cameras? And these websites emerged where they would just document the locations of the cameras. And there's no crime in doing that. But then other people would use the information from those websites, and they would go at night and, with hand saws or electric saws or various, spray foam, expanding foam, or various other methods, they would immobilize and disable these cameras. They became known as the blade runners. They'd cut the wires or do various things.
Yeah.
And that is still continuing. There is barely a ULEZ camera, and it expanded into the city of Oxford. It expanded elsewhere as well with their various trials. There's barely a camera left that hasn't been vandalized and had to be replaced. Now, they are being replaced. It's not like the system is falling apart and it's not working. They are replacing them. But there is an ongoing, very, very steady campaign against that. And I think what we're seeing is we're seeing a rise in protest, which is an important part of democratically expressing your will. But we're also seeing an energetic civil disobedience campaign. And yes, I do classify the vandalism of the ULEZ cameras, etc., as civil disobedience and not as vandalism. I can go into the philosophical reasons why I see the difference there if anyone's interested. But what we're seeing is sort of the active arm and the political persuasive arm are both rising at the same time. And the tolerance of Brits for government misbehavior, I think, has reached an end. And I think we are watching, in combination with all of what's happening in the US with Donald Trump and the change in direction over there, I think we're seeing literally a complete change in direction for Western civilization. And it's literally, we are living in history right now. People will talk about this in the same way that we talk about the sexual revolution in the 1960s.
Oh, absolutely. This is a spiritual war. This is a battle of good and evil. And, the insidious part about evil is it hides in plain sight, and it hides in the faces of people you love. And what I found so fascinating, not just about the Blade Runners, but contrast that to what's happening, say, in Melbourne, where the Greens Run Council has pulled out all of the parking in the CBD grid and put in bike lanes. And they're trying to encourage people to ride their bikes to the city. Well, that's great if you live within a couple of kilometers of the city. Yeah, you can probably get on your bike. And maybe the only thing you need to take to the office is your laptop. But for people like me who carry 100 kilos worth of gear and 4 big boxes and just have me, it makes life very difficult. So, anytime I get asked to go into the city for work, I have to charge considerably more now because it takes me a lot longer to get into the city. So I usually travel down the Nepean and then down St. Kilda Road, which is down to one way now. And then I have to, once I've been able to make my way through the traffic, park in at the top level of a multi-story car park. And then I have to grab all of my gear and put it in a beach cart and then travel down an elevator. If there's not one, I go down the stairs. And what people don't realize is it makes my job incredibly difficult, which means I have to then spend more time doing it, which means the client pays more. And so what this means is everyone starts putting their prices up. So I'll tell you a story really quickly just on that. One of my biggest clients is on Market Street in the city, so literally in the CBD grid. And I said to them, I went there maybe, 4 or 5 weeks ago. And the time prior to that, I could not get a park in the multi-story car park. There was no spots. And so I drove and it took me, these things take you 20 minutes to go to the top. So I went all the way to the top, did not find a car park. I went, oh shit, drive all the way back down another 20 minutes. So I was late and I rang them. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I can't get a car park. Now the next car park's in the next city block, which means it's a kilometer on foot by the time I've parked the car and then moved everything. So what should be like a 20-minute shoot is now taking me almost, 90 minutes just to get there. And then I started getting a bit flustered and I was a bit stressed. And I drove back down and I went at the front of their office building is a bus zone and then a no standing zone. And I was like, well, I just need to dump my equipment. So I was like, oh shit, what do I do? I don't want to get a fine. Anyway, there was some cops there. And I wound down my window and I said, hi, I'm really sorry, but I'm a photographer. I need to drop off my gear. I just need to go in there. I literally just need to park, put it all in there, and then I'll move my car. Is that okay? And they're like, we'll go one better. Pull up behind us and you can go do what you need to do. And so I said to them, I'm literally just taking, right? I said, I'm literally just taking one headshot. I'll be like 15 minutes tops. And they're like, off you go. We'll mind your car kind of deal. And I was really shocked by that. Went up, did the photo, and I came back.
I did not expect that.
Right. And I came back down and I was very like, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And they're like, yeah, don't worry. Like, this is ridiculous. We agree. It's ridiculous. This whole
Yeah,
thing,
wow.
even couriers, disabled, parkers, the whole thing is just shit. And the reason I highlight that story is like, that's just one person on one day in Melbourne. How many
Yeah,
people is that affecting every day, every week, every month? And so
yeah,
again, you talk about the butterfly effect. Like,
yeah.
this is just making life harder. And these inner city
Needlessly.
elitists, these
Yeah,
people who run the councils, whether it's Melbourne Council, City of Yarra, all the woke councils are like, oh, pardon me, this is a great thing for the climate. This is a great thing. We're going to do a free tram zone. Okay. But you still have to pay to get in the city to get to the
that's
free
right.
tram zone.
That's right.
So I'm actually
That's right.
still paying for it. And that's the greatest cop out. Oh, it's free. But what they don't tell you is that by the time you've paid to get to that point,
Yeah,
you've already paid for the CBD bit. So it's never
yeah.
actually free.
All right. So can we talk for a minute about wealth? Because I think there's some useful perspective
Have you
adjustment.
got some for me? I wouldn't mind some.
There's some wealth for you. No, look, I haven't even got enough for me yet. So when I was in recruit course, so I was in the Army Reserves, I was in recruit course. I'm not saying that to impress you. It's just that was the experience where this happened. Recruit course is designed to be unpleasant, right? It's not hell. It's not the worst thing you'll ever do, but it's designed to be unpleasant. It's designed to weed out the people that psychologically can't cope with being uncomfortable, being under pressure, being yelled at, being tired, all the rest of it. So they deliberately make it unpleasant. And over my time when I was in the Army Reserves, I was in infantry. So we did all the various IETs, infantry training, and you got to go out in the bush and you got to, dig trenches and lay out razor wire and sit up all night on pickets and go and do ambush exercises and all that stuff, right? And they try and tire you out and make it very unpleasant. Well, recruit course was unpleasant, and I trained myself to always be counting. And so there was 72 days in recruit course back when I did it. It was a particular window of time when the reserves and the regulars did the exact same recruit course. And so I was there with, we were all just in together, and it was 72 days. And it didn't matter what my day was like. I would get to the end of the day and go, well, I'm one day closer. Right, I'm one day closer, and I could just count down those days, and that was comforting. That was something that was useful to me as a tool, something to hang on to that would get me through each of those unpleasant days. But then I got a foot infection that caused me to get sent home and have to come back and finish off recruit course. The problem was that my unit back home said, no, you don't have to do any training here. We don't have to do any refreshers here. You'll get refreshers when you get back. Because when you get back, they test you to make sure you're still up to standard to go back into recruit course where you left. So they didn't do any refreshers. They just threw me straight in. And I made an elementary mistake in the first aid test. And I didn't use a splint when I bandaged the snake bite victim in the first aid test. And unfortunately, that was something that they taught in week 2 out of this 10-week long recruit course. And so all of a sudden, I went from being, 6 weeks in, more than halfway, to being almost back to the beginning. And I had to mentally deal with, hang on, my number, that thing that I was holding on to that was keeping me going, my number just went the wrong way by a lot. And I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what you hang your hope on and what you hang your hat on. And for those that have done my masterclass, I talk about hope and how it's incredibly powerful, but it can also be used against you. It can be weaponized against you, and you've got to be careful what you hang your hope on. And a lot of what I taught in that masterclass comes out of these experiences. And so then I got through recruit course. That was fine. And I was then on infantry training exercises at Puckapunyal down in Victoria. Or I say down in Victoria, for you, it's up further in between Victoria and the border. And it gets down to sub-zero during winter there. It's not savage, but it gets to sub-zero. And your water bottles will freeze, not solid, but they'll have ice on the top, and you'll have to tap through the ice to be able to drink your water in the morning. And so it's cold, like it's properly cold, and we're doing what's called a tactical exercise. So you have to treat it as though you're in a war zone. You can't make noise, you can't have any light, you can't heat your food, you're eating cold ration packs out of foil bags, all the rest of it. And so I taught myself a discipline there that got me through. And I would go to sleep each night, and my webbing, which is part of your gear, basically, it's a gear holding thing. It has a little bit of padding on the inside, so I would use that as my pillow. And often we couldn't necessarily get our sleeping bags out. That we couldn't, that was a luxury that many nights we couldn't afford. So we were just in our thermals and sleeping potentially a few of us down the bottom of a dugout where we've dug out these sort of trenches and these defensive positions and trying to get a bit of warmth down there. And I would go to sleep knowing that I was going to have to tap through the ice on my water bottle in the morning, hungry, having not eaten enough if I'd eaten it all. Most days we did eat, but, hungry the whole time, fatigued, the muscle aches, and just over it. And I would lie there and I would think to myself, I have clean water in a water bottle that's not going to kill me when I drink it tomorrow morning. I will probably get to eat tomorrow, and that food is going to be healthy and nutritious. And there's nothing out there that's actually going to try and kill me tomorrow. This isn't a real war zone. This is just pretend, like we're just playing. And the realization that those things, food, water, I couldn't add shelter because we didn't have any shelter, but food, water, and the fact that I wasn't being active, my life was not under active threat. I taught myself to hang on to those things and to go, hey, I'm actually pretty privileged right now, to be honest. Like, yeah, it's freezing cold, but I'm wearing these things called thermals. And there are people experiencing the freezing cold and they don't have thermals, right? I'm actually pretty lucky. And so what I developed in my head and what evolved out of that experience and that mental discipline was a framework of recognizing wealth and the stages of wealth. And I think this is really important because it helps us to anchor ourselves in just how fortunate we are here in Australia. So there are people at the very bottom, which is just survival. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. Your physical life is uncertain, such as your poverty. And there are people in the world who are living in that reality right now. Then there are people where they take a step above that. It's no longer their life is in jeopardy, but their housing security is in jeopardy. Their job security is in jeopardy. Their life still has a lot of uncertainty, but it's no longer life and death uncertainty. And then you come up to another level of wealth just above that, where security begins to kick in a little bit more, but they're so poor that they spend a lot of time to save money. Dollars are very, very precious. So they'll spend a lot of time hand washing dishes or hand washing clothes because they can't afford a washing machine, even though it's a time-saving device. Then you get a bit wealthier and you start to be able to buy time-saving devices. The value of your time begins to be a thing. And then value of recreational time begins to do a thing. We buy household devices to save us time in the kitchen so that we can spend more time watching television. Such is our level of wealth. And then you go even further into people spending money to save time as opposed to spending time to save money, and you get into genuine high levels of wealth. And what I realized was what all of us tend to do, and this is human nature, and it's a good part of human nature, we adapt to what we have. We get used to it. We get used to the level of time saving that we enjoy already. We get used to the level of comfort that we enjoy already. We get used to the level of security that we've become accustomed to. And what we do is we curse ourselves by always looking to the next step up the ladder. And we say to ourselves, once I get there, I'll be happy. Because from where we are, we can't see the next step beyond that. We just see the next step and we go, oh, well, that's where I want to. If I get there, I'll be happy. The problem is the process of getting there exposes you to what's next and the next thing and the next thing. And so if we live in this mental state where we're telling ourselves the next thing will make us happy, then we've condemned ourselves to never being happy with what we have. And it was that experience of having to choose to be happy with frozen water in a water bottle and maybe getting some food tomorrow that actually helped me to reach the point where I can actually be happy in an absolute sense with whatever I have, no longer in a relative sense. And it puts you in a tremendous position of strength.
That is a good story. But I just want to bring it back to something that you said in the earlier part where you were talking about, the Army Reserves and the training and things like that. This is not a similar story. And, but I just want to point out something. So a lot of people ask me how I became mentally resilient, how do you get so confident, all those lovely comments. And I say it's not one particular moment. It's just a compound of different things. But for those of you who don't know, I actually only have one functioning lung. And I have always found sport incredibly difficult. Now, I went to a school where sport was like the number one, right? Everyone played footy or netball. That was it. And so I was your classic, didn't want to go to PE because I found it really hard. Now, I actually didn't know when I was at school that I had a problem with my lungs. I didn't know that was actually an issue. I was just diagnosed with asthma. And back then they didn't just do a body scan and check things out. Anyway, long story short, I grew up thinking that I just couldn't do sport. I couldn't do fitness. And as always, this will make you guys laugh. I started seeing this guy, and this guy happened to be in a thing called CrossFit, the cult. Anyway, and, as you do when you're in your early 20s, I wanted to impress him and, go and be where he was. And so I went to this thing called CrossFit. Now, this is early days. This is like 2010. I think there was like 2 gyms in the country. So it wasn't what it is today. And I walked into what can only be described as like a red room. It looked like a dungeon. I was like, what the fuck? Like, there's no equipment. I was like, where's all the equipment? You know, it was just like what looked like monkey bars. Anyway, and so it was an open day for his gym, and then they go and start working out. And I've seen nothing like this in my life before. I'm watching people throw barbells around and like do what they call butterfly pull-ups, and they're swinging on these monkey bars and they're grunting. Yeah. They're ripping their shirts off, and I'm like, fuck is this? I was 24. This is a long time ago. I love that. Yeah, that comment. No, this is a good story, I promise. And that was my first impression of this whole fucking CrossFit thing. And yes, it was. And actually, it was spectacular eye candy because all these men were fucking ripped and good looking. Anyway, ladies, I'm just telling you, if you're single. Anyway, so because I like this guy, that was the only reason I started CrossFit. And anyway, I ended up loving it. And the reason I bring it up is that everyone finds something that they end up loving, or that brings something out of them. Now, for me, it was actually the weightlifting part of CrossFit. Not so much CrossFit. I never competed, never did any of that. But it was the first time I went to a gym and didn't feel intimidated and didn't feel like I was being judged or mocked, right? I had horrendous self-esteem. Pardon me. I was debilitatingly self-conscious to the point where I would constantly look at my reflection and make sure, I didn't have something in my teeth, or didn't like just, those silly insecurities you have when you're in your early 20s. And in a CrossFit gym, there's no mirrors. So there was no room to look at your mirrors. You didn't know what you looked like, right? And everyone was too busy like trying to gasp for air to like judge you. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you this story is I had told myself my whole life, you can't do sport, you're bad at it. But when I was around a group of people who just genuinely wanted to do something that was hard, it rubbed off on us. And I will say I'm literally one of the first bastion of like Kool-Aid drinking CrossFitters. I was. And before it became the sport, before it became the bullshit that it is today, it was actually a really amazing thing because firstly, I realized my body is actually way more capable than I realized. I didn't know I could do that. I'm not a naturally inclined fitness person. I'm not a sports person, but now I am. I've been doing weight training for almost 18 years now, and I owe it to CrossFit. Not only that, I learned what mental toughness was. Now, for anyone that goes to the gym, like when you're in the pain cave and your legs are giving up and you don't want to go another rep, but you should, because that's going to be how you push through that barrier. There was something about that and having people cheering me on and come on, one more rep, keep going, right? I learned something that I was capable of doing because I had that camaraderie. And I honestly believe, I'm not saying everyone go do CrossFit. I'm just saying that where else do you get those opportunities? You get it in the army, when you have the brouhaha, you get it during pain week or whatever they call hell week. You get it when you're in a sports team and you're at the bottom of the list and you have your Mighty Ducks moment where you come around together and you go, we can do this. We want to win. I don't know where kids get that these days. I really don't know. And I don't know where adults get that. Now, the reason I bring up the story is we then went on to, this was at the point where Tough Mudder and all those like Spartan phalangistic.
Yeah.
Did in the comments, let me know, did anyone do Tough Mudder? I did it the very first year it came to Australia, and the marketing for it was fantastic. The marketing for it made it look like it was Hell Week and you were going to become a Navy SEAL at the end of it. Like you were going to get electrocuted, you were going to crawl through these muddy pits of hell, and like it was fantastic. Anyway, I think I can't even remember what year this was. I want to say like maybe 2011, 2012, somewhere there. Anyway, and here's me, little old pathetic Carlz going, I can't do that, but I'm going to try, right? I'm going to try.
Yeah.
And we went as a big group, and it was down on Phillip Island, and I did it. And it was tough as shit. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And remember, I've only got one lung, guys. I managed to not only run 20 kilometers, but do all the great little things. And the funny thing is, at the end, there was this I can't even remember what it's called, but it looks like a half pipe. And you have to wait in the queue. The bad thing about being the first to do Tough Mudder is they hadn't really worked out the logistics of the timing of everyone. So there was a lot of people waiting at each challenge, and you didn't want to leave the challenge. But because it was so cold, it was on Phillip Island in like September. I wanted to finish this last challenge. I was like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I ended up getting hypothermia.
Oh.
So much so that it was my turn to go run up the tunnel thing or the half pipe, I actually couldn't do it. Like I was speaking to people and being incoherent, which is, a normal day for me.
Yeah.
But
not great.
When you're shaking and your lips are blue, people are like, oh shit. And unfortunately, quite a few of us did get hypothermia. I don't want to say it was bad on the organizers. I think it was just, you covered in mud, you've been out in the elements for hours. Anyway, the point is, I came out at the other side hypothermic and having to be warmed up and a little bit shit, but having done the hardest thing to that point of my life. And I can't tell you how much that changed me. And I'm not trying to lecture you guys, go do CrossFit. I'm just saying that was what it was for me that made me go, holy shit, I'm more capable than I realize. And I learned that I think I was like 24, 25, something like that. And so when you do really hard things, it really starts to build the foundations for what can be very healthy self-esteem. And that's why, when I was talking about chicken in the noodle aisle, or when I talk about being truly exceptional, I'm not saying it because I'm this goody two-shoes, pearl clutching, conservative. What I'm saying is there is something incredibly special about harboring such healthy self-esteem that you end up bringing up everyone around you. You've heard the quote, you are the sum of the people you spend the most time with.
Yep.
So imagine if all of those people are whingers who don't know their gender, who think that capitalism is evil. You become that which you're around. Well, what about the opposite? What about all of a sudden we start caring? What about all of a sudden we start working a little bit harder, doing things that are difficult? It's no different to making your bed in the morning. That's what we need to encourage people to do. Sorry.
Speaking of being exceptional, I'm exceptionally easy to amuse in really silly and small ways.
What did I do now?
No, you're going to think that I tried to stitch you up because I caught you with a weird facial expression. That was not on purpose. That was a quirk of timing. But my shirt that says too much 1984, not enough 1776.
Yeah.
I saw that we had over 1,700 people watching. Now, what we can see here for those watching elsewhere, what we can see is the aggregated number of all of the destinations together. So there's 1,762 people watching right now. I managed to capture this screenshot with 1,776, otherwise known as 1776, people watching. Now I just need to get another screenshot with 1,984 people watching. And at that point, I think I can die happy. I feel like I've achieved something today by getting that screenshot. I just don't know what.
You made me look like I've had a stroke.
Well, look, I didn't capture you at the most flattering moment, but literally as soon as that number changed to 1776, I had to immediately take the screenshot. So that just was what it was.
Well, you do you, boo. Well done. But just to finish what I was talking about, I'm not talking about CrossFit anymore, I promise. And I haven't done CrossFit for 5 years, so relax, guys. But can we just appreciate that where we've gone wrong is actually with the self? Leftism, Marxism centers around the individual, right? That's the ultimate goal, is the individual. And
I disagree with that as a premise.
do you?
Yeah.
It centers around ego.
Well, this is an interesting one because people say, it's individualism, and people rail against individualism and the hyper-atomization of society and individualism, blah, blah, blah. No, the left is very much about tribalism. It's very much about finding a tribe and joining that tribe, and you find your individual identity by the tribes to which you belong. That's why they're so desperate to stay in the tribes, and they'll compromise all their principles in order to stay in. So I'm sort of
where this is where I argue with you. Yes, you're right. They need to exist in tribes, but they're not loyal to their tribes. And this is what happens with their purity tests. They push it too far. And then this is why G and I came up with our bucket theory. They need to push people out of the buckets, and then what ends up happening is it centers around themselves. And I'd say Clementine Ford's a good example of that. She started off as a feminist, and she attracted people to her tribe, and then through the horizon perpetually shifting and the purity test becoming more and more extreme, she's actually shrinking her influence and shrinking her audience. And at the end of it, it will be Clementine Ford ranting to herself in a car to an audience of no one. That's the end goal of leftism, because that's the only place it can go. It's the reason Stalin died alone in his office as his stomach acid was pouring out of his intestines, because he rotted from the inside out, and his own men, his own people were too scared to go in there to make sure he was dead.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
You've seen the movie The Death of Stalin?
Yes.
Very, very funny, understated comedy, and very black, obviously. But yes, you're not wrong in that sense. I'm actually, so I had to talk about human rights again with this most recent video that's coming out tomorrow, talking about the cancel culture and whether people losing their jobs for laughing at Charlie's assassination are being canceled, or whether that's just consequences.
Sorry to talk over you. We did get this comment. I'm just going to share it to Katie, and she sent it over on the buy us a coffee button. Am I pointing it the right direction?
You are pointing in the right direction. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there you go.
I figured it out. My camera's mirrored. Anyway.
Buy us the coffee on the coffee app, everyone. Thank you.
Buy us coffee. So Katie sent us this question. So how does the firing of people for social media opinions sit with the libertarian philosophy? On your own platform, absolutely block people, etc. But should social media posts impact you?
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for bringing that up. So that's a great question. Who was that on the platform? Because that came up as you.
Katie.
But Katie. All right. Thank you for the question, Katie, and thank you for the donation. I literally made a video about exactly that. It's coming out tomorrow. So you have the right to speak. Absolutely. But other people have the right to hear what you've said and to make their own decisions. And so there are other human rights in addition to freedom of speech. The key one in this case is freedom of association. So you can say, I want to say what I want to say, and no one's allowed to stop me. And that's true. You have the right to say what you want to say. And no one can stop you. Like, no one has the right to stop you from saying it. But someone hears you and says, well, hey, I find that really repugnant for whatever reason, they can disassociate from you. And if they happen to be your employer, they can fire you and say, I don't want you in my business anymore because I don't want someone who says that sort of thing to be seen to be employed by me. That's freedom of association. So human rights and the exercise of human rights doesn't absolve you from consequences. It allows you to do the thing, but it doesn't make you immune from other people responding to that thing. And there's a lot of confusion around human rights. Let me touch on positive versus negative human rights. So we lump everything together. When you read the UN Declaration of Human Rights, when you actually understand what human rights are and where they come from, it is an absolute dog's breakfast. It is a mishmash. Some things that are really actually human rights and other things that are completely made up. And the difference is this. If you believe in human rights, in order for that as a phrase, as a category to exist, you have to believe that they are rights. They're not gifts. They're not permissions. They can't be taken away because someone says, oh, I don't want you to have that anymore. They have to be deeper than that. They have to be innate. So they're rights in the first place. The second thing is you have to believe that they apply equally to every single human being, because if they're unequally applied to different human beings, well, then they're not human rights. They're not, what's the category that they're applied to? If it's humans, then they're equal for every single human. So once you understand that, you realize the very concept of human rights it creates boundaries for itself. A human right cannot be something that imposes itself on others, right? So, for example, the UN says you have a right to an education, okay? Do you have the right to force somebody to teach you? I would agree that you have the right to not have someone stop you from getting an education, but you don't have the right to force someone to sit down and teach you something. You have the right to freedom of movement. That is a human right. So you have the right to not have other people stop you from traveling. Does that give you the right to commandeer someone else's car? Well, no, because now you're violating their right to private property. You can't force them to drive you there. You're violating their right to travel where they would like to go instead of where you want them to go. So human rights, by definition, have limits because they have to be equal. So once they expand to the point that we're now imposing ourselves on other people's rights, we've gone beyond the limits of our rights. So to say to somebody, you have to keep employing me no matter what, is violating their right to freedom of association, right? So you have the right to say it, they have the right to fire you. Now, this question here is a good one. So does this justify the arrests in the UK for posts on social media? No. So understand a couple of things. Firstly, governments cannot have rights. Human rights. Governments are not humans. They're corporations, they're organizations, they're conglomerations. You could call them a dozen different things, but they don't have rights because they're not human. So a government can't turn around and say, well, I have the right to do this. No. Individuals have rights. And this is why I am actually individualistic. Individuals have rights. Corporations do not. Governments do not. Now, for the government to turn around and arrest somebody because they said the thing, well, that is a violation of your right to speak. It takes away your right to speak any further, and it's punishing you in a legal sense. It's a corporate entity coming in to punish you in a legal sense. Now, if you look at the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, it explicitly says Congress shall make no law concerning religion, freedom of speech, and the press, and a bunch of other things. Right? It's explicitly restricting the action of government. So what it's saying is they can't stop you, which is that is the definition of a negative right. A negative right is something that is reserved to me that other people aren't allowed to stop me from doing. Now, people hear the word negative and they think, oh, it must be a bad thing. No, it isn't. It's the phrasing. It's unfortunate, but that's the phrasing that was picked by somebody long ago. A negative right reserves a thing for me. You have a negative right to freedom of speech. That means you have the right to not be stopped from speaking, but you don't have the right to force somebody else to listen to you, or to agree with you, or to do what you said that they should do. So there's a really important distinction that's kind of been lost in human rights. Negative versus positive rights. Negative human rights, ones that protect you from being stopped from doing the thing, they are human rights. If they are equal, i.e. you can do that thing and it doesn't violate someone else's rights. The minute you doing that thing violates someone else's rights, or the minute you are taking someone else's property, time, rights in any way, shape, or form, then whatever it is that you're claiming is no longer your human right.
So I'm in a couple of Katie's just followed up there with a should they fire you to do something on your own time, e.g. social media? And I'd say yes, because okay, so this is where I'm going to put my little more conservative hat on. I again believe that you should be able to say whatever you want to say. However, your employer has their own company values, they have their own company constitution, and they have their assets and the integrity of the company to protect. And first and foremost, when it comes to building a business, you need to protect that, because the only purpose of a business is to make money. That's the only purpose of it. So if there is going to be someone who comes into your business and jeopardizes your business's capability to turn a profit, whether it's a small business or a corporation, then that's a liability, and you remove liabilities. That's the only job that you have as someone that's at the head of a company. So if you have a person, an employee that's doing this on their own time, then and that brings disrepute onto the business, then absolutely you should be sacked.
Yeah, that's a threat to your business.
That's at the end of the day, you have an obligation as the director, as the business owner, to discourage this. So the thing that I find really interesting and hypocritical with the left this week, everyone's sort of getting fired for their jobs, is you just spent the last 6 years doing that to people like me. So just to really quickly summarize, when I spoke up in COVID, and then I got put on a current affair and everyone came for me, right? They threw everything they could. Now, thankfully in Australia, we don't have guns, so I didn't get bullets, but I did get death threats, rape threats. I had people in my backyard banging on my doors at all hours of the night, trying to genuinely terrify me.
For those that don't know, Carly got doxxed in a pretty high profile way, in a pretty contentious time, shall we say. So yeah,
it was July 21. So that was the worst time, and this is just as they were rolling out the vaccine, and everyone was like saying that I'm disinviting my family from Christmas if they don't get the vaccine. That at the worst, I would say arguably one of the worst times in recent human history. Anyway, and that's when I got cancelled. The viciousness, the ferocity of which these people came for me was unmatched and unprecedented. And I will happily say I was like a deer in the headlights. I did not know how bad it could get, and I experienced it. Now, the person who was at the head of the table, who was the biggest cheerleader for this, was Clementine Ford. It was her who mobilized her army, and they came after me. It was egregious. It was So aggressive. They were coming for blood. Now, I believe, now this was never said, this is just my perception, this is my opinion. I believe that they were hoping I would do the unthinkable. I genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe these people were hoping I would take myself out.
Yep.
And I'm not going to lie, they got close. And now we've told that story before. Topher was one of the few people that pulled me off that cliff, basically. And the reason I say that is I don't want any of you to know what that feels like, when it feels like the entire nation. Now, it sounds like I'm being hyperbolic. That's not necessarily what was happening. That's what it felt like. Every person in my life had turned on me. The nation had turned on me. And I was just standing in what felt like the Colosseum, and everyone was throwing knives at me. Now, as I said, I don't want people to know what that feels like. But for Abby to turn around now, having been one of the people that does that, and Clementine Ford, now, to be fair, Clementine Ford, like, the one thing I'll give her is she's fucking confident. And she hasn't turned around and go, oh, watch me, poor me, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I give props where it's due. And as I said before, she is actually an intelligent woman. I disagree with her wholeheartedly on everything, but she's an intelligent woman. Abby, on the other hand, plays with fire and then cries about getting burnt. So when you talk about canceling people, the people who did that to me saw no consequences. I still have one of the messages, and this is probably the worst one because it came from someone I knew, and it was, I cannot wait for the day where I get to see the photo of your Jeep wrapped around a tree. That was the comment. Imagine saying that to someone who most people would have known. Anyone that had watched that story, seen that story, would have been like, shit, that girl's copping it right now. Now, you could disagree with me, but you know, I was on a current affair, man. People were coming after me.
You weren't just on a current affair. Sorry to jump in, but for those that don't know, your face was put on the front page of your local newspaper in the area where you lived, with the headline, something along the lines of the Christopher Skase of Geelong, or something like that. You were copying it in literally around your own home, in your neighborhood. When you were on the phone to me, and we were on the phone quite a lot during that time, just trying to get you through, you were in fear of even trying to leave your house in order to find safety. You weren't safe in your house, but you were afraid to even leave your house. You couldn't shop. You couldn't go out. You were a prisoner in your own home, but you weren't even safe there. Like, I just want people to understand, Carly is not hamming this up. This is real. I was on the other end of that phone line multiple days, over multiple weeks, and I saw it all unfold. Carly went through hell. She's not hamming this up.
I didn't leave the house for over 5 weeks. I literally did not leave my front door for 5 weeks. I didn't open the blinds. I ordered food from the supermarket and had the drop. It was in lockdown anyway. So, but my point is, and I've dealt with this now and I've made peace with it, but I imagine that's what hell feels like. So when it comes to having sympathy for these progressives feeling the consequences now, I think they need to feel it. I hope they never feel it like I felt it. But yes, unequivocally, lose your job. Unequivocally, feel shame, feel embarrassed, cry, scream, good. They need to taste that medicine, because only then will they maybe reckon, and look, these people are devoid of any self-awareness, but maybe then they'll go, holy shit, I actually cheered this on during COVID. I did this to someone. I sent the nasty messages. Look, to this day, I still have a forum of me on the internet where people watch my social media and try and call my clients to get me canceled. Like, this is still ongoing. I'm tougher now. But this is what the left does. And then to see an Abby Chatfield get up there and go, oh, I live in fear. Bitch, please. You've mobilized your army on people multiple times. And to be honest, she did this I think we talked about it on the podcast, maybe 3-4 months ago, where some guy that she knew from high school, I think it was, can't remember, whatever, it doesn't matter. Some guy that, disagreed with her, and she posted his comments and his name and just went to town on him. Beyond oh, this guy's a dickhead, just story after story, just tearing this person apart. Abby does this every day. Her boyfriend literally last week put up a video saying protesters need to die. So these actions must have consequences. It's not should they, it's they must.
Yeah. And so long as we're operating within the boundaries of law, so things like shame, things like calling them out, that sort of stuff, I've got no issue with it. Actions have consequences. I said all the way through the cancel culture craze, I said, listen, guys, these networks or whatever that are canceling the comedians and the hosts and whatever, they have the right to do that. They're your employer. They have the right to fire you. They have the right to disassociate from you in the same way that you have the right to disassociate from the network if they go in a direction that you think doesn't reflect well on your values. So sorry,
and just,
big boy. Yeah.
One quick caveat, and at the core of all this, right? Remember why I got cancelled. I got cancelled because I condemned lockdowns and said it was detrimental to small business. That was my entire argument.
Yeah.
And for the first 2 weeks, I was like a media darling. I was on Sunrise, I was on the Today Show. And the reason I was on those shows is I spoke much like I am today. Very level-headed. I wasn't hyperbolic. I didn't talk about the vaccines. I didn't talk about denying COVID. I went in there with a message. I was on brand. And I talk about this often with the protests. You have to keep your message succinct and clear. And my message was about small businesses. And then, what happened, right? So I got punished like that through a baptism of fire for literally just speaking up for small business.
Yeah.
These people that are getting their jobs or getting fired today cheered on cold-blooded murder.
Yeah.
We're not the same. And if you can't see that distinction, then you are like, I can't help you.
You're watching the wrong podcast, that's for sure.
Yeah, I got treated like a supervillain for speaking up for small business. Abby's getting some heat for cheering on and also encouraging a presidential assassination. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right, we need to wrap up, but I want to finish on a really great question here from Joe Cameron. Do you think the government has the right to stop a person getting an anti-stab vest in Melbourne? I'm just about to lose my camera again. Internal temperature's too high. There we go. Can you still hear me?
It's all right. No one wants to see your face anyway.
No one wants. Hang on, I just muted myself. Let me just switch my camera here. Hang on, over here, and then
I'll answer that quickly, Joe.
Camera. Yeah, go.
Like, okay, so you can't get stabbed in the chest. You can, like, a man literally had his hand cut off with a machete like a month ago. I don't see the statement here. Like, okay, so you want the government to allow stab vests. That's not going to stop anything. I understand the sentiment.
Yeah, I think the question is more representative of questions around self-defense and self-protection. I'm a self-defense absolutist, just as I am a free speech absolutist. And I absolutely believe you have the right to provide for your own protection, your family's protection in whatever way you believe to be right, provided, again, you're not violating other people's rights. As long as you're not running around as a danger to other people's right to life, liberty, and property, then you have the right to provide, to make provisions for your own protection. I think the Australian government banning guns, I think, is a human rights violation. But put that aside, and let's go to a slightly less controversial one, banning pepper spray. And we had David Limbrick on this show last week, David Limbrick MP down in Victoria, one of the few good ones. And he made a great point. Women are already buying pepper spray, legal or not. Women in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, or places where it's not been decriminalized, where it's not been legalized, they're already buying it for good reason. Because, they're sitting there going, well, hang on, and pepper spray can be quite useful. He made the point, and he's correct. Pepper spray still gets used in the US where people also have guns. And it can be very effective in certain situations. It's not always. I don't think it's a complete solution, but I think it'd be a great step in the right direction. So what is the Labor government going to do? What is Jacinta Allen going to do in the event that a woman uses pepper spray, and let's hope successfully, in her own self-defense against someone who is going to do her some form of harm? What is the Jacinta Allen government going to do? Are they going to prosecute that woman with weapons offenses or not? And, self-defense is a human right. Your right to provide for your own self-defense, your own protection, your life, your liberty, and your property, that is a human right. It is an inalienable human right, and one that the government can violate and does violate here in Australia, but cannot actually take away. That right still exists. They will just punish you for exercising that right. So no, they don't have the right to deny stab vests or really anything else.
Not only that, just to bring you up to speed to what happened over the weekend. There was a spate of robberies again, standard weekend in Melbourne. But would you believe that not only were they using machetes, they're now using pickaxes. So
charming.
it now turns out that you can hold up an IGA with a pickaxe.
Well, we're going to need a new shape of bin.
I was going to say, like, so what's next? We ban pickaxes, and then we ban knives in general, and then we ban, I don't know, the legs of chairs and screwdrivers. You know,
before you say how crazy can it get, don't forget that in the UK they do knife blitzes, where they confiscate all kinds of things and they take photographs of it and they put it online. A little bit like the point you made earlier about Abby Chatfield and her boyfriend. It's like you filmed that and then you went, yes, let's put this online, right? The Met Police are not only going out there raiding for knives, and they are literally confiscating butter knives if they're found in the wrong place. And they are taking these butter knives, they are photographing them and posting them to social media as though they did a thing, right? As though they've done a good thing, something worthy of celebration. So when we ask how crazy can it be, how bad could it be, how many things might they try and confiscate, that's example number one. Example number two, don't forget that the TSA in the US after 9/11, they used to break off the little nail file part of a set of nail clippers, that little nail file that comes out. They would break that off for fear that you might use that as a weapon. Listen to me, hear me carefully when I tell you this. If a would-be hijacker is sitting on a plane going, damn it, I was going to hijack this plane, but now I can't because they took my nail file off me. That is not a hijacker I'm afraid of. That is not someone that I'm afraid to have a showdown with. All we are doing is disarming the innocent. We are disarming the victims. There are only two people guaranteed to be at the scene of a violent crime, the perpetrator and the victim. All we are doing is guaranteeing that the perpetrator will not get harmed by the victim. That is all we are accomplishing right now.
Just on that, photographer problems. I cannot tell you how many times I have walked through, not just TSA, but here in Melbourne, with a roll of duct tape in my carry-on. Duct tape and gaff tape, quintessential photography kit. Every time they take it off me, and I'm like, what do you think I'm doing? Honestly, that's how, and I mean, think about how micromanaged we've been since September 11. And interestingly, even though that was over 20 years ago, they haven't repealed any of this. It's only gotten worse. Is the laptop in or is the laptop out? I don't even know. Which one is it? Can we just have like universal laws for the F-port?
Am I taking my shoes off this time? And have a guess. I'll give you one guess. I reckon you can get it in a single guess. How many actual terrorist attacks have been stopped because the TSA found and thwarted it?
None.
One guess. Zero.
None. Yeah.
They have a record of zero, and yet a very significant number of TSA employees have been found to be stealing people's stuff, being creepy, all sorts of different assaults of different unpleasant natures. More TSA officers have gone to prison for crimes they committed on the job than terrorists they've caught.
Yeah. It's so exhausting. The whole thing is so exhausting. I was going to say, because you and I were going to talk about this, but just to wrap us up, because I think you were fired up for this. You were going to say friendly Geordies, like you're going to make an example of him, but
So I didn't get around to watching the rest of the video, and you've assured me that by the time you finished the video, you had a very different sentiment to what I had, having only watched kind of the opening 90 seconds or 2 minutes. So I'm going to hold fire on that until I've actually seen it.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is like, you've got to give people credit where it's due. So yes, there have been countless, and look, I actually had them all up here ready to go, but maybe we'll look at them on Wednesday if we can be bothered. Just all these people cheering on the murder, right? What you actually need to see is people on the left who have somewhat of a platform coming out and condemning the behavior. And Geordie's, to be fair, he didn't necessarily condemn it, but he came out saying, like, America, are you okay? What is going on? And he made a comment that I thought was like pretty indicative of where he sits. He said, the Democrats always talk about guns are the issue. He said, I'm now inclined to believe the Republicans, it's the person holding the gun. And it's true, right?
Interesting.
Like we've banned the machete, but it's like we haven't done anything about the people holding the machetes. And look, Geordie is a lefty. The fact that he's even saying that, you've got to give these people credit. I know it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. But, as much as people don't want to hear me say this, you do have to offer a olive branch to the more reasonable ones.
And I'm with you on that. And you know, we've talked about this before. You know, if we want to run some exclusive purity club where no one who wasn't already on board is allowed in, well, we're only going to have a shrinking movement. So no, I'm with you on that. But I was fired up because I saw the first 90 seconds or so, and I had to stop because kids and everything else, and I hadn't got back to it yet. But I was not impressed with what I saw there. But yes, you've assured me that he did finish much more strongly. So I'm going to hold my fire on. That's why I hadn't talked about that publicly, because I hadn't watched the rest of it yet. So fair play.
Yeah, I think, you know, because it was, you know, I'm conscious that we spend a lot of time talking about the negative stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, is it enough? No, but it's something. And I think it's worth, you know, condemning that. On Wednesday, you guys let us know quickly in the comments. Do you want us to deep dive into some of these responses? Or, I mean, it's already out there. I think everyone that's on X or social media would be seeing this. The old
thing is,
FAFO.
There's so much other stuff to talk about, though. And I don't say that to be disrespectful to Charlie. A lot of that's already being covered. There's so much other stuff that does need to be talked about. Someone just mentioned in the comments here, people are freaking out over this new climate report and all the fear mongering. I'm prepping a video on exactly that. You know, we've just had this report into Islamophobia come out in Australia, and they're going to try and ram through essentially blasphemy laws on top of the ones we've already got. You know, there's so much other stuff that we do need to be covering and talking about. So unless there's a really compelling reason to, my inclination is going to be to say, hey, with all due respect to Charlie, we have talked about it. We have given it its due. And I'll keep watching the cultural shift, and I will keep reporting on that as that unfolds, because I think we're into the silver linings phase now. And the price is being paid. The price is horrific. The price was awful and should never have been paid, but it has been paid. And so now we're watching the silver lining come out of that. And I think that's going to ripple on for literally decades. I think this will be seen as a pivotal moment within a turning point in history. But there are also other things that we need to stay on top of.
I think it might be worthwhile. Like I did say this last week, and maybe we can end with this. You know, last week was too much for me. Not just the Charlie thing, it was just the 3 murders in general, and seeing them on socials and seeing the way they were handled. It was just too much for me. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this whole online stuff. But, you know, you kind of work through it. And so, I don't know, like, there's a lot of things wrong with the world that we'll never, as Topher and I said, when Albo got re-elected, we're like, well, we're never going to run out of things to talk about. Would you guys just answer me this in the comments, because all the data out there tells me the opposite, but would it be worthwhile us focusing on some good news, like bringing to light more stories that are a little bit more lighthearted, genuine good news? Now, I know people tune into the Oddcast because we talk about the bad stuff. I don't know, man. Like I've been talking about chicken in the noodle aisle. Maybe is it time we start noticing people who doing the, I don't know.
You do the good stuff. I posted a lovely video online, and it has this for human psychology, right? There's a lovely video online that I found. I shared on, I think, my Facebook, of a guy who was just basically at the supermarket going up behind elderly people who were counting up their money and tapping his card, right? Yes. Yeah, and that went viral. And so I shared that because I think that's lovely. I think it's an awesome thing. And that's kind of like a bucket list kind of thing. And huge amounts of really positive comments, and that's fantastic, and as it should be. But of course you get those few. And there's 1 or 2 people in there going, oh, and of course you had to film it. Like, do it without filming it, you attention whore. Like, oh, guys, if he hadn't filmed it, it wouldn't have been put into all of our consciousness that, hey, here's a thing, right? And this is cool. This is a little heartwarming moment. But the unfortunate thing is, Carly, as you alluded to before, all of the data says being negative gets you more clicks. And my experience says being positive invites people to jump into the comments and be negative. So unfortunately, I'm not sure that we can win this one.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So on that, very quickly, do you guys know who Jimmy Rees is, the comedian? He made it, like he did all the lockdown videos.
Yeah.
Anyway, my next video, like the one we just watched, is going to be on Tall Poppy. Now, I have talked about Tall Poppy, but this is specifically about something that Jimmy put up. Now, Jimmy does satire and skits around, you know, news, and most recently, Adrian Portelli has been in the news, right? And so he did this skit, and I don't have necessarily an issue with the skit. Yeah, that's who he's from, Giggle and Hoot.
Yeah, Giggle and Hoot, yeah.
But what I did think was really interesting, and I don't know if Jimmy underestimated his own audience, were all the comments tearing Adrian Portelli down. Oh, he's a piece of shit. Oh, this guy's got too much money. And so my video is going to be on that, on Tall Poppy, on full display. And if we wonder why people don't want to fight for Australia, like, because Topher and I get that too when we say, we've got a plan B. And the plan B is not necessarily growing old here in Australia. And people are like, you should be staying and fighting for Victoria and Australia. And I'm like, why? Like, even if we do fight, even if we do well here, people don't want us to do well. That's a quintessential Australian cultural phenomenon. So yeah, I just find it pretty gross the way that people come for Portelli. But we can't have it. Like, even here, this comment. He's a fraud and a scammer. Okay.
Yeah. Don't read the comments. All right. We need to wrap up because it is late and I'm in the car very early. Hang on. No, today's Monday, not Tuesday. Oh, yes. I'm not in the car very early tomorrow. I have one more day before my trek to Melbourne and back. But yes, I still need to get my beauty sleep because I need all the beauty I can get.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you everyone for super chats and for the coffee donations. You guys can shout us coffee anytime over here. And we do have a membership, which if you want to be an OG Oddie, you can join. It's $15 a month. That literally just supports the channel. You can do that over here. And we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And that works out, by the way, if you're doing the math, that works out to be less than $2 a show. So,
Yeah. But what it does do is we are moving into a new studio, not tomorrow's episode, not Wednesday's episode, next week's episode. And with that, we are hoping to upgrade and do some things, and we are able to do this for longer. So thank you very much. That is my grift.
I'm going to have to buy a new camera that doesn't overheat. This camera cannot handle 2-hour long.
Is that a Sony issue?
It's specifically a Sony A7C issue these days. The A7S is a lot better now, but the C being compact, it does overheat, unfortunately, as I am proving the hard way. Anyway, let's get out of here.
All right, guys. Thank you for a lovely night. We will see you Wednesday for the podcast and next Monday for the live show.
Ciao. Thanks for joining us.